For thousands of years, the earth has hidden its secrets beneath soil, ice, and stone. Ancient tools, mysterious artifacts, and forgotten creations whisper stories of ingenuity and human curiosity. Tonight, we'll explore discoveries that still baffle scientists, revealing the remarkable ways our ancestors shaped the world. From golden ornaments to stone tools and ingenious devices, each artifact carries a story that has waited centuries to be told. Settle in, relax, and let the wonders of ancient technology unfold before you. Don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments. The journey is just beginning. The towering Bronze Age warrior of Azerbaijan. In the quiet plains of western Azerbaijan, beneath the rolling grasslands and weather-worn hills, archaeologists uncovered something that silenced even the wind: a kurgan, an ancient burial mound, resting undisturbed for nearly 4,000 years. Inside, they expected the usual relics of the Bronze Age: pottery shards, a few weapons, perhaps the remains of a chieftain long forgotten. But what they found was something far beyond their expectations. A towering warrior, still standing in silence after nearly 4 millennia. The excavation began like any other: brushes, trowels, and quiet coordination under the harsh sun. The soil was dense, heavy with time. Layer by layer, history gave way. First the outline of a burial chamber, and then fragments of bronze glinting faintly through the dirt. The team uncovered a skeleton, but this was no ordinary find. The bones were massive, the stature unusually tall for the Bronze Age, over 6 feet in height. This man had been a giant among his peers, a true warrior in both presence and legend. The chamber was lined with carved stones, and at its heart, the warrior lay surrounded by weapons: a bronze sword still intact, a dagger, arrowheads, and a great spearhead, each one crafted with incredible precision. Near his head, a heavy bronze helmet rested, green with patina, yet unmistakably regal. It was unlike anything seen before in the Caucasus. Intricate markings swirled around the metal, spirals, suns, and geometric lines that may have told a story, or perhaps carried a protection for his journey into the afterlife. The kurgan itself dated back around 3,800 years, to a time when early kingdoms were forming across the ancient Near East. Yet this region, now Azerbaijan, had long been a crossroads of civilizations. Traders, warriors, and travelers passed through its valleys, leaving behind traces of Sumerian, Hittite, and Persian influence. This warrior might have lived during the height of this exchange, a guardian perhaps of his people's lands, or a chieftain whose legend echoed through generations. As archaeologists examined the body, they noticed something strange: the way he had been buried, upright, as if standing in eternal watch. Such a burial was rare, almost ritualistic. In many cultures, standing burials were reserved for heroes, defenders, or kings believed to possess divine strength. Could this have been a protector, buried to face the horizon forever, watching over his tribe even in death? The artifacts found beside him painted a vivid picture of life during the Bronze Age in the Caucasus. Fragments of decorated ceramics suggested trade with distant cultures. A necklace made from small animal bones hinted at personal ritual or totemic belief. And most intriguingly, traces of woven cloth, preserved only in patches, showed fine craftsmanship, evidence of an organized society capable of artistry, as well as war. Each item was carefully documented, restored, and analyzed. The bronze objects, when cleaned, revealed signs of advanced metallurgy. Their composition was unusually pure, suggesting that the people of this region had mastered smelting techniques that rivaled even the early Mycenaeans. For a civilization considered peripheral by some historians, this find proved otherwise. These were not isolated tribes, but a people connected by ideas, trade, and shared innovation. As the analysis deepened, radiocarbon dating confirmed the astonishing age. Around 1800 BCE, the warriors' weapons matched other artifacts from the time of the Kura Araxes culture, a society that thrived in the South Caucasus and parts of the Near East. But there were differences too, signs that this burial belonged to a unique branch, possibly a local ruler or war chief, whose influence extended far beyond his tribe. The surrounding kurgan contained other burials as well: women, children, and other men, likely members of his kin or retainers. Some graves were simpler, with only pottery or small trinkets, while others hinted at higher status. Together they formed a necropolis, a silent city of the dead, telling stories of hierarchy, warfare, and spiritual belief. What fascinated archaeologists most, however, was the symbolism carved into the stone slabs of the chamber. The motifs resembled suns, moons, and spears, celestial and martial at once. They suggested a belief system in which warriors were not only fighters but guardians of cosmic order, protecting the balance between life and death. In a way, this towering man might have been both a warrior and a spiritual sentinel. When news of the discovery spread, scholars from across Europe came to see the site. Some suggested the warrior's height and strength might indicate a genetic lineage of tall nomads who roamed between the Caspian and Anatolian plains. Others believed he might have been chosen for his extraordinary build, revered as a hero in life, and deified in death. As weeks passed, The excavation site became a delicate operation of preservation. The chamber was mapped, photographed, and sealed under controlled conditions to prevent damage. The warrior's remains were gently lifted and transported to a nearby lab, where they would undergo detailed analysis. But even in the sterile light of the lab, his bones seemed to hold presence, the quiet dignity of someone who once led, fought, and perhaps died for his people. The finding not only expanded our understanding of the Bronze Age, but also deepened the mystery. Who were these people who built monumental kurgans and forged such advanced weapons? How did they organize their society? And what beliefs guided their rituals of death? Each answer uncovered another question, another shadow of history that refused to fade. In modern Azerbaijan, the plains where he was found remain much the same, windswept, golden, and vast. Sometimes as evening falls, the wind seems to hum across the land, carrying a low, steady tone like a distant chant. Perhaps it's imagination, or perhaps it's something older, the voice of the Bronze Age itself, whispering through time. Tonight, as we rest, think of that ancient warrior, tall, silent, surrounded by bronze and stone. For nearly 4,000 years he stood in the dark, unseen, guarding the threshold between memory and oblivion. Now uncovered and illuminated once more, he reminds us that history is not dead, it sleeps, waiting to be awakened. And just as the wind brushes over the endless plains of Azerbaijan, so does time brush over us, gently, endlessly, carrying stories older than we can imagine. New Troy excavation yields fresh evidence of an epic war. Under the warm light of the Turkish sun, on a quiet hill near the Aegean Sea, archaeologists once again brush the ancient dust of Troy. For centuries this land, known as Hisarlik, has whispered stories that echo through legend and history alike. Here, where myth and earth intertwine, new excavations have begun to reveal something extraordinary. Fresh evidence that the Trojan War, once thought to be poetic imagination, might have been all too real. The discovery began quietly. Teams from several universities returned to Troy, not to chase heroes or gods, but to seek the truth beneath the soil. Every dig at Troy is a journey through layers of time, from medieval fortresses to Hellenistic temples, and then deeper, to the Bronze Age ruins that have held humanity's fascination for over 3,000 years. As the archaeologists descended through the levels, they began to uncover new signs of conflict, charred beams, fractured stones, and weapons buried amid collapsed walls. It was as if the ancient city had frozen at the very moment of destruction. Among the ruins, a wall segment stood partially scorched, charcoal residues traced along its surface, and when analyzed, they dated precisely to the same period associated with Troy VII, the level long believed to be the Troy of Homer's Iliad. For decades, historians debated whether Troy VII had truly fallen in war, or merely to natural disaster. But these new findings painted a more vivid and violent picture. Embedded in the collapsed walls were bronze arrowheads, hundreds of them. Some were of local Anatolian design, but others came from distant lands. Their alloy composition matched weaponry known from the Greek mainland, suggesting foreign warriors once laid siege to this city. For the first time in decades, archaeology began to speak the same language as legend. In nearby houses, the excavation team discovered storage jars, smashed, half buried in rubble. Grains still clung to their interiors, preserved by the heat of an ancient fire. The contents suggested the city had been well supplied, as if preparing for a long defense. This wasn't a sudden abandonment, it was a siege, a battle that burned for months, maybe even years, before Troy finally fell. The archaeologists also found fragments of slingstones, spearheads, and most hauntingly, a human skeleton trapped beneath a collapsed doorway. The position of the bones told a desperate story, a man attempting to flee, crushed as the structure gave way. His body, untouched for millennia, lay face down in the dust, an echo of the final moments of the city's fall. As the research continued, new geophysical scans revealed that the lower city, the area outside the citadel walls, was far larger than previously believed. In Homer's tales, Troy was not just a fortress, but a thriving metropolis, and now evidence confirmed that thousands may have lived here, surrounded by farms, workshops, and bustling trade routes. This was not a mythic kingdom, but a living city, one that had everything to lose when the invaders came. Pottery found at the site told its own quiet story. Distinct patterns, imported styles, and trade materials showed connections stretching across the Mediterranean, from Crete to Cyprus, from the Greek Isles to the Near East. Troy was a hub of commerce and culture. That same network, historians now believe, could have made it a target. If the Trojan War truly happened, it might not have been just about Helen, or love, or pride, but about power, trade, and control of the seas. Among the most striking discoveries was a series of clay tablets found in the surrounding region, possibly referencing the ancient city as Wilusa, a name strikingly similar to the Ilios of Homer's verse. One Hittite inscription even mentioned a powerful ruler from Ahiawa, thought by many scholars to correspond to the Achaeans, the Greeks. If true, these records might be the world's first written evidence of the Trojan conflict, not myth, but memory. Night after night, as the team worked under soft lantern light, the landscape of Troy seemed to change. The breeze carried the scent of the sea, and sometimes, the faint echoes of what might have once been, voices shouting across the battlements, the clang of bronze on bronze, and the crackle of burning wood. Of course, these were only the sounds of imagination, but they made the past feel alive again. As the season's excavation drew to a close, one find in particular stood out, a bronze sword hilt, ornately decorated with gold inlay. It had been buried beside a stone threshold, as though left in haste or as an offering. Its style matched Mycenaean craftsmanship, yet it had been repaired with local materials, a fusion of cultures or perhaps a trophy taken from battle. It was a tangible link between two worlds, the Greek and the Anatolian, united in war and legend alike. The team's findings began to reshape the timeline of Troy. While earlier digs had revealed cycles of destruction and rebuilding, this latest evidence pointed to a single catastrophic event, one violent enough to end an era. Charred remains and collapsed fortifications aligned perfectly with the date around 1180 BCE, a time when many civilizations of the Bronze Age suddenly crumbled. Historians call it the Late Bronze Age collapse, a mystery of fire and silence that ended some of the greatest cultures in the ancient world. Perhaps Troy's fall was part of that same chain reaction, the death of an age. When the excavation season ended, the archaeologists covered the site once more, protecting the ancient ruins from the wind. The sun fell low over the horizon, gilding the land in amber light. The hill, quiet again, seemed to breathe, as if exhaling the secrets it had held for thousands of years. Somewhere beneath that calm surface lay the echoes of warriors and kings, of loss and victory, of fire and faith. As you listen now, picture it, the towering walls of Troy, gleaming in the dawn, the smell of salt air and smoke, the shouts of defenders, the crash of waves against the shore where ships once burned. All of it, history and myth, intertwined forever in the soil. Every trowel stroke, every piece of pottery, every broken arrowhead reminds us these were real people. They lived, fought, dreamed, and died beneath the same stars we see tonight. The legend of Troy isn't just a story, it's a memory carved into the earth itself. And with every discovery, we draw closer to the truth that myth has always known, that even when stone crumbles and time forgets, some stories never truly end. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, imagine the wind brushing over that ancient hill. The city may be silent, but its heartbeat still lingers, steady, eternal, waiting for another dawn. The silent bags of the Stone Age, dog teeth and memory, beneath the quiet soil of southern Germany, far from the noise of modern cities. Archaeologists have unearthed something both simple and haunting, fragments of woven fabric, tiny beads, and dozens of small pointed teeth. At first glance, they seem like relics of some forgotten hunt, but as the team brushed away the centuries of dirt, it became clear that these were no ordinary teeth. They belonged to dogs, animals that once walked side by side with humans nearly 4,500 years ago, and what they revealed was a story not just of fashion or craftsmanship, but of connection between people, their animals, and the strange spiritual world of the Neolithic past. The discovery was made near the town of Ulo, in central Germany, a landscape of soft hills and open fields, once home to communities who farmed, hunted, and built their homes of timber and clay. When researchers began excavating a burial mound here, they expected pottery, tools, perhaps human bones. Instead, they uncovered traces of something far more delicate. The remains of bags, small pouches that time had nearly erased. Only the teeth, arranged in careful patterns, survived to tell their story. Each tooth had been drilled, strung, and attached to what must once have been soft leather or woven fiber. Dozens of these teeth, from dogs of varying sizes, formed intricate fringes and decorations. When light touched them, they must have shimmered faintly, a rhythmic clatter of bone against hide, as their owner walked through the grass. To the modern eye, it might seem strange, even grim, but in the world of 2500 BCE, adornments like these carried deep meaning. In life, the dog was not just an animal, it was a companion, a protector, and a symbol of loyalty. To wear its teeth was not an act of vanity, it was a gesture of respect, remembrance, maybe even grief. The people who crafted these bags were part of a community that saw the world as alive with spirit. Every creature, every river, every stone had a voice, and through the slow work of threading bone and fiber, they believed they could speak back to that living world. When the archaeologists analyzed the site, they found that the dog teeth were remarkably well preserved. Some still carried traces of polish, as though handled for years before finally being buried. This wasn't a random scattering, it was deliberate. Perhaps the bag had been laid beside its owner, in a grave, a final gift for the journey beyond. No human remains were found with these particular artifacts, but nearby burials held individuals with similar ornaments, necklaces of animal teeth, bracelets made of shell, and headbands strung with amber. The pattern suggested status, perhaps even a kind of identity passed through generations. Who were these people who lived in the valley thousands of years before Rome, before Greece, before written history? They were farmers, yes, but also artisans and storytellers. They watched the stars, tended the fields, and shaped their world with patience. When they made these tooth-adorned bags, they may have been marking a story, a successful hunt, a bond with an animal, or a memory of loss. As the archaeologists examined each tooth under magnification, they saw something striking. All of them came from domestic dogs, not wolves. That small detail changed everything. It meant these were not trophies of the wild, but keepsakes from companions. Some teeth even showed signs of wear and healing, meaning the animals had lived long, cared for lives. These were beloved creatures, and in death, they were given new purpose, to accompany their humans in the next world. The soil of the burial mound also held traces of ochre, that red mineral pigment often used in prehistoric rituals. It stained the ground near the artifacts, suggesting that the burial might have been ceremonial. Picture it: a quiet evening, long before metal tools or cities. The community gathers in the fading light. A shallow pit is prepared. The air smells of smoke and damp earth. A small pouch, adorned with polished dog teeth, is placed beside the body. A priest or elder murmurs, words that have not been heard in thousands of years. Then, the earth is returned, sealing the moment forever. Centuries passed. Rain fell. The land changed. Forests grew and were cut again. Villages rose, vanished, and were rebuilt. And yet beneath all of it, those tiny teeth waited, untouched, unbroken, sleeping in the dark until the day a modern trowel brushed them back into light. What makes this discovery remarkable isn't just its age, but what it reveals about emotion, about how ancient humans felt toward the creatures around them. The people of the Stone Age have often been portrayed as harsh, pragmatic, struggling only for survival. But here, in the soft curve of a dog's tooth, shaped and polished into an ornament, we see tenderness, a quiet kind of love that transcended even death. Nearby, researchers uncovered more artifacts that deepen the mystery. Fragments of textiles woven from plant fibers, suggesting that these communities had mastered techniques long before such knowledge spread across Europe. Microscopic analysis showed traces of dyes, faint pigments once used to color the cloth. It meant these bags were not crude or purely functional. They were art, objects of beauty, carried with care. The more scientists studied them, the clearer it became that these weren't isolated pieces. Similar finds, though rare, have been discovered across Europe, from Poland to the Czech Republic, and as far north as Denmark. Each one carried its own unique pattern of teeth and beads, but all spoke the same silent language, a tradition, passed hand to hand, echoing across generations. When night falls over the valley where the artifacts were found, it's easy to imagine what it once looked like: a cluster of wooden homes, smoke rising from fires, dogs padding between them, their eyes catching the light. Somewhere, a young woman or man sits by the hearth, threading small white teeth onto a strip of hide. The work is slow, patient, almost meditative. Each tooth represents a story, a memory, a bond, a promise. Perhaps it was meant as a gift, perhaps as a farewell. We will never know their names, or the exact words they spoke, but through their hands, their art, their care, they've left something of themselves behind. In the lab, modern scientists used radiocarbon dating to place the artifacts around 2500 to 2300 BCE, the dawn of the Bronze Age, the transition between stone and metal. The world was changing, societies were expanding, trade was spreading, and yet even as humans learned to shape copper and bronze, they still found meaning in something as small as a dog's tooth. That continuity, that gentle thread between practicality and spirit, reminds us that technology may change, but the heart of humanity does not. The story of the tooth-adorned bags also touches on something universal: the urge to remember, to carry a part of what we love with us, even when it's gone. Whether it's a photograph in a locket, a ring, or a charm tied to a wrist, we still do what they once did: hold on to memory. The people who made those bags might have thought they were preserving power or protection. Maybe they were, but perhaps they were simply trying not to forget. Medieval sword recovered from the Vistula River in Poland. Under the gentle current of Poland's Vistula River, something ancient lay hidden for centuries, waiting. The world may rush forward, but history never forgets. It only waits for the right hands to uncover its truth. In 2019, as archaeologists sifted through the riverbed near the town of Włocławek, they stumbled upon something extraordinary: a medieval sword, remarkably well preserved, its blade still gleaming faintly beneath layers of silt and time. This wasn't just any sword. It was a relic of war and honor, a silent witness to a world of knights, banners, and battles fought long before the dawn of modern Europe. The sword was dated to the late 13th or early 14th century, a period when Poland was divided into duchies, each ruled by rival princes who fought for control, territory, and legacy. Yet this weapon was not found in a battlefield. It was found deep in the river, perfectly preserved in the cold mud that shielded it from decay. Many wondered, who did it belong to? Was it the prized weapon of a fallen knight, dragged beneath the current during a crossing? Or perhaps it was an offering, a ritual sacrifice to the spirits of water, as ancient warriors once believed rivers to be sacred gateways between worlds. The sword's handle was wrapped in bronze wire, elegant, practical, and made for a hand that knew the rhythm of combat. Its balance, the weight, the craftsmanship, all pointed to a skilled maker. The blade bore marks of use, yet no sign of careless neglect. Whoever wielded it respected it deeply, and inscribed faintly along the blade was something astonishing, a symbol, almost erased by time. To the trained eye it resembled a cross, one used by medieval Christian knights. Some experts even suggested it might be linked to the Teutonic Order, the powerful German military order that once clashed with Polish forces in the north. Could this sword have belonged to a Teutonic knight, who perished in battle, his weapon claimed by the river as tribute? The Vistula River, often called Poland's Queen, has long been more than just a waterway. It has witnessed centuries of trade, invasion, and migration. In its depths lie countless stories, lost boats, coins, tools, armor, and bones. To this day, divers continue to pull history from its depths, piece by piece, but the sword stood out. It was in such pristine condition that experts compared it to museum-quality relics preserved in controlled environments. The river's lack of oxygen and cold sediment acted like a time capsule, sealing this moment of medieval warfare from the march of centuries. As restorers carefully lifted the sword from the mud, they noticed something touching, a leather strap still clinging to the hilt. Imagine that, a simple piece of leather, surviving nearly 700 years underwater. It's small details like that which make archaeology so profoundly human. You're not just holding an object, you're holding someone's story, frozen between centuries. When examined under laboratory conditions, the sword's metallurgy revealed advanced forging methods. The steel had been folded and tempered multiple times, ensuring both flexibility and lethal sharpness. This wasn't the work of a common blacksmith, it was crafted by a master. In an age before mass production, every sword bore the soul of its maker. And so, even though the knight who once held it is gone, his spirit lingers, in the weight of the blade, the precision of its edge, and the reverence with which it was made. But what of the knight himself? Did he perish in the river, his armor dragging him down as the current pulled him away from battle? Or was this sword simply lost, dropped by accident during a crossing? Some historians believe it could have been offered intentionally, a ritual to ensure victory, or to honor the dead. Ancient traditions often treated rivers as holy places, transitions between life and afterlife. From Scandinavia to the Mediterranean, countless weapons have been found beneath waters, swords, shields, spears, laid to rest as tributes. Perhaps this was one of them. As we imagine the scene, the knight kneeling by the riverbank, his armor glinting beneath a pale sun, he might have whispered a prayer. Then, with quiet reverence, he cast his sword into the water, watching it vanish beneath the rippling surface. To him it was not loss, it was remembrance, and centuries later we find it again, a symbol of devotion, courage, and the inevitable return of forgotten stories. The discovery of the Vistula sword adds another voice to Europe's medieval past. It speaks not only of war and valor, but of craft, belief, and the human urge to be remembered. Even after centuries of silence, the river gave back what it had kept, as if to remind us that nothing stays buried forever. So the next time you see a river, flowing gently through the quiet of night, imagine the secrets beneath, weapons, tools, jewelry, perhaps even letters never read. Each one carries a story, waiting for the right eyes to see, and the right hearts to listen. As this sword now rests safely in a museum, polished and displayed under soft light, it no longer belongs to one man, it belongs to all of us. A fragment of history returned from the deep, a reminder that even in silence the past still whispers. And as the current of the Vistula continues to flow, slow, steady, eternal, it carries with it the echoes of knights, kings, and the timeless hum of human memory. Shroud of Turin matches medieval sculpture, not a human body. Beneath the quiet hush of candlelight, inside a cathedral where centuries seem to breathe through stone, lies one of history's most enduring enigmas, the Shroud of Turin. For generations it has been revered, debated, and worshipped, a faint image on a piece of ancient linen that some believe bears the face of Jesus Christ himself. Yet behind the reverence, behind the awe, there lingers a question that has haunted scientists, historians, and believers alike. Is the shroud truly divine, or a human creation, crafted by hands far more recent than its legend claims? The shroud stretches over 14 feet long, faintly yellowed with time, bearing what appears to be the front and back imprint of a man's body, a face marked by what seem like wounds, a form that evokes both suffering and serenity. For centuries the faithful have gathered before it in Turin, Italy, feeling as though they stood before a relic of resurrection itself. but as modern science began to test faith with evidence, the mystery deepened rather than faded. Carbon dating in the 1980s shocked the world. Results suggested the fabric was not from the time of Christ, but from the Middle Ages, between 1260 and 1390 AD. It was as if the relic that had stirred faith for generations suddenly stepped backward in time. From the 1st century to the 13th, the Church remained cautious, neither confirming nor denying its authenticity, aware that this single piece of linen carried the weight of belief for millions. But science kept asking, how could such an image appear? No brushstrokes, no pigment, no known technique seemed to explain the faint, almost photographic imprint. The image wasn't painted. It seemed scorched onto the fibers, yet not burned through. It was shallow, less than the thickness of a human hair. Whatever made it, it wasn't random. That mystery drew teams of scientists, artists, and theologians, each trying to unlock its secret. And now, a recent study has begun to reshape what we thought we knew. Researchers compared the shroud not to human remains, but to medieval sculptures, and the results were striking. The proportions of the body on the shroud matched those of statues carved in the Gothic period, not a natural human form. The chest, the arms, the symmetry, all reflected artistic stylization, not anatomy. It was as though the figure imprinted on the shroud had been modeled after sculpture, not life. The lead researcher described something fascinating. When you overlay the shroud's image with 13th century crucifix sculptures, the alignment is almost perfect. From the posture of the shoulders to the elongated limbs, from the narrow waist to the elegant slope of the face, the body on the shroud matches the idealized depictions of Christ from that period. To the artists of medieval Europe, beauty and holiness were expressed through form, not realism. And so the Christ they carved and painted was not a man of flesh, but an ideal, stylized and symbolic. It now appears that the shroud carries that same artistic fingerprint. Imagine then the world of the 1300s, cathedrals rising toward heaven, filled with frescoes, relics, and carved icons of devotion. It was an age when faith was seen as the truest form of truth, and relics were bridges between the earthly and divine. Across Europe, towns competed for holy artifacts, a drop of blood, a splinter of the cross, a saint's bone. Each promised blessings, pilgrimages, and glory. Could the shroud have been created in this very climate, not as a deception, but as a profound expression of faith? If so, it would have required extraordinary craftsmanship. The faint image, visible only in certain light, behaves like a photographic negative. It's as if the maker understood how light interacts with linen centuries before photography existed. Some theorists propose that heat or chemicals were used, perhaps a sculpted figure, heated and pressed gently against the cloth, to leave a ghostly impression. Others imagine an artist experimenting with alchemical methods, blending devotion with science in secret monasteries. No one can yet reproduce it perfectly, but every attempt reveals one truth: whoever made the shroud possessed both skill and vision. Yet for millions of believers, science cannot erase the sense of presence that the shroud radiates. When people stand before it, they do not see pigment or textile. They see pain, faith, and redemption. The faint outline of a wounded man seems to breathe, to whisper across centuries. Perhaps that is its true power. Not in proof, but in feeling. Still, the new comparison with medieval sculpture changes how we interpret the relic. It bridges the sacred and the artistic. Maybe the shroud is both, a masterpiece of devotion that transcended its creators. Perhaps it was made not to deceive, but to inspire, to give form to the invisible mystery of faith. Art and religion have always danced together, each reflecting humanity's need to touch what cannot be seen. When viewed under infrared light, researchers found further clues. The weave of the linen matches medieval European techniques, not the ancient methods used in the Middle East. The thread pattern, the stitching, even the faint traces of pollen on the surface, all speak of European origin. Each small detail adds another layer to the story, and together they whisper of a medieval artist, who perhaps unknowingly created one of the world's greatest enigmas. And yet, the deeper we look, the more elusive the answer becomes. Science tells us the how, but never the why. If the shroud is an artifact of faith, then its mystery may not need solving, because sometimes what endures through time is not proof, it's wonder. Imagine the medieval sculptor, hands covered in dust and clay, shaping a vision of Christ, not from memory, but from devotion. Perhaps after the work was done, a linen cloth was laid across the sculpture, pressed gently, blessed, and folded away. Centuries later, when it was revealed, the image seemed otherworldly, a divine imprint born of art and reverence. The new findings don't diminish the shroud's significance, they deepen it, because what we now see is not just an image of one man's suffering, but the reflection of an entire civilization's longing for contact, for meaning, for proof of the eternal. And whether crafted by a sculptor's hand, or marked by something we cannot explain, the shroud continues to do what it always has. It makes us pause, it makes us feel, and it makes us wonder. The young elite woman of Khorasan, In the still silence of northeastern Iran, beneath layers of time and dust, archaeologists uncovered something that seemed to pause the rhythm of the dig, a perfectly preserved burial, resting in the cradle of an ancient Bronze Age world. The bones belonged to a young woman, graceful even in death, surrounded by objects that spoke not only of her life, but of a civilization long lost to the memory of humankind. She came from a place known in whispers of archaeology as Greater Khorasan, a realm of trade, art, and innovation that flourished nearly 4,000 years ago. But who was she, and why was she buried as though she were royalty? Tonight we drift back across millennia, through deserts and forgotten valleys, to uncover the story of the young elite woman of Khorasan, a mystery carved in silence, beauty, and dust. The discovery began quietly, as most great finds do. A team of Iranian and international archaeologists were excavating what was once an ancient settlement, near the edges of the Great Kopet Dag Mountains. The land there is harsh, windswept plains stretching toward the horizon, where the earth holds secrets instead of crops. And yet beneath those dry hills, the soil is rich with traces of a people who thrived when much of the world still wandered in tribal obscurity. It was in this landscape that they uncovered her tomb, a simple earthen chamber, but arranged with extraordinary care. Her body was laid in a curled fetal position, as if returning to the womb of the earth. Around her the remains of pottery shimmered with faint geometric designs. Beads of turquoise lay scattered by her neck, and at her feet a bronze mirror, polished even after all these centuries. It was the kind of burial that spoke of status, reverence, and a life touched by privilege. The artifacts told a story of wealth and artistry. The pottery wasn't local. Some pieces traced their origins to the ancient cities of Central Asia, while the turquoise came from distant mines in what is now Afghanistan. Bronze tools and ornaments hinted at trade connections stretching across thousands of kilometers, evidence that the people of Khorasan were part of a vast and sophisticated network, long before written history arrived in these lands. The archaeologists soon realized this wasn't just a burial, it was a window into a forgotten civilization, a culture that connected east and west before either had names. A bridge between the rising powers of Mesopotamia and the early kingdoms of the Indus Valley, and at the center of that world was this woman, young but clearly significant. Her bones spoke of strength. Examinations revealed she was around 25 years old when she died, healthy, tall, and well-nourished. No signs of violence, no struggle, no disease that could easily explain her death. Perhaps she died in childbirth. Perhaps she was taken by an illness that passed quickly through her body, but left no mark on her bones. Her teeth showed fine wear, suggesting a diet rich in grain and fruit, not the coarse, rugged meals of common laborers. In her right hand she held what seemed to be a small bronze amulet, a piece shaped like the crescent of a moon. Was it jewelry, a symbol of rank, or something sacred, an emblem of the gods her people once prayed to? Khorasan, even today, is a word that means the land of the rising sun. In the Bronze Age it was the beating heart of trade routes that would one day become the Silk Road. Its people built fortresses, crafted intricate ceramics, and worked metals with a precision that amazed modern scientists. They weren't nomads, they were builders, creators of cities, of systems, of art. And now, through this single burial, we see how deeply they valued life, death, and identity. The arrangement of her tomb suggested ritual, careful positioning, ceremonial layering of soil, offerings placed in specific order. This wasn't mere burial, it was ceremony, a farewell fit for someone important. One of the most striking discoveries was the bronze mirror near her feet. Even after millennia, its surface reflected faint light, a symbol perhaps of beauty or of connection to the afterlife. In many ancient cultures, mirrors were portals between worlds, the living and the dead, the seen and the unseen. Perhaps she was meant to gaze through it into eternity. Near her head, researchers found a cluster of beads made from lapis lazuli, the deep blue stone once prized above gold. That stone came from far-off Badakhshan, high in the Afghan mountains. Its presence here confirmed that Khorasan's people were part of one of the earliest global trade systems on Earth. These weren't isolated villagers, they were participants in an ancient world economy, moving goods, ideas, and beliefs across continents. But beyond the objects and artifacts, there was something else about this discovery, something almost haunting. The way her bones rested, perfectly aligned, the gentle curve of her arms, the care taken to position every vessel, every ornament. It was as if someone, thousands of years ago, had wanted her to be remembered. Who were they? A grieving mother, a husband, a priest? We'll never know. But the silence of that burial, the precision of its design, feels deliberate, an echo of love and loss that somehow survived 4,000 years. Through analysis of the soil and surrounding materials, scientists were able to date the tomb to around 1800 BCE, the height of the Bronze Age in this region. At that time the world was shifting, empires were forming in Mesopotamia, trade networks reached from Egypt to China, and metallurgy was reshaping how societies built and fought. Khorasan stood at the crossroads of it all. It was a melting pot of innovation, where cultures met and ideas fused. And this woman, this young elite, might have been part of that transformation. Maybe she was a leader's daughter, a priestess, or a figure of ceremonial importance. Her jewelry, her position, and her grave goods all pointed to someone who held status beyond the ordinary. Some scholars suggest that her burial marks the evolution of social hierarchy in the region, the shift from tribal equality to structured class, from survival to civilization. She might represent the dawn of organized society in ancient Khorasan, where art, belief, and politics began to intertwine. Others wonder if she was connected to ritual, perhaps even considered divine. Others wonder if she was connected to ritual, perhaps even considered divine. The crescent amulet in her hand, the mirror by her feet, the turquoise by her neck, together they form a language of symbols. The moon, reflection, and sky, elements tied to the heavens. Maybe she wasn't just a noblewoman. Maybe she was seen as a bridge between the mortal and the divine. As the excavation continued, the team uncovered traces of nearby graves, simpler, less adorned, more ordinary. Her tomb, however, stood apart, larger, deeper, more carefully constructed. This separation, archaeologists say, is key. It shows hierarchy, perhaps even early signs of dynastic lineage. In her time, Khorasan's people were writing their own story of civilization, one that would later feed into the rise of empires across Persia and Central Asia. When the scientists lifted the bronze mirror from the soil, they noticed faint etchings on its back, circular patterns, possibly symbolic. Under magnification, these markings appeared to represent celestial forms, perhaps stars, or even the phases of the moon. If that's true, then this mirror was not just a tool, but a cosmological object, a reflection of the heavens themselves. It's possible the people of Khorasan already had a rudimentary understanding of astronomy, long before written records mention such things. Today, the young woman's remains rest in a controlled environment, protected from air and time. The objects that once surrounded her have been cleaned, catalogued, and displayed in museums across Iran. But even as we examine them, we're aware that something deeper lingers, something that science can't quite measure. The quirky medieval carved head of Orkney. In the far northern islands of Orkney, where the sea carves the land and the wind never rests, archaeologists uncovered something small, yet deeply human. A little sandstone head, barely the size of a fist, with wide eyes, a crooked smile, and an expression that feels halfway between a joke and a secret. It wasn't gold, it wasn't jeweled, but somehow, it caught everyone's attention. Because when you look at that face, you feel that someone, hundreds of years ago, wanted to make something that could still make people smile. The story began on the island of Westray, during an excavation at a medieval settlement. It was quiet work, brushing through layers of time, following the outlines of old stone walls. Then one of the diggers noticed something different, a small rounded shape between two slabs. He brushed away the dirt, and a pair of carved eyes looked back at him. A pause followed, that moment when the world holds its breath. For the first time in perhaps 7 centuries, someone had locked eyes with the maker's creation again. The archaeologist lifted it gently from the soil. 2 eyes, a nose, and a smiling mouth, softly worn by wind and sand. It was simple, but alive in a way that surprised them. Experts later dated it to somewhere between the 12th and 15th centuries, a time when Orkney was changing hands between Norse and Scottish rule. It was a crossroads of culture, Viking traditions blending with Celtic myths, and Christian faith. And amid all that change, someone sat down with a piece of sandstone and carved a face. Was it meant as decoration, a charm, a joke? Nobody knows for sure, but it reveals something important. Even in the harsh windswept north, people still created art, still found comfort in making something human. The carving isn't perfect, the eyes are uneven, the smile tilted, but those little flaws give it a spark of personality, almost as if it's frozen mid-expression, caught between laughter and thought. Some believe it might once have been part of a wall or a church support stone, known as a corbel, meant to look down from above, smiling at the villagers below. Others think it could have been a protective charm, placed near a doorway to guard against bad spirits, a kind of stone guardian. In medieval times, people believed carved faces could watch over homes, or trap evil spirits before they entered. Some even linked them to the Green Man, a mysterious symbol of rebirth and nature found all over medieval Europe. If that idea had reached the Orkney Islands, perhaps this little smiling head was part of the same ancient belief that life, even carved in stone, could protect life. Imagine the moment it was made. A craftsman, maybe a farmer, maybe a stonemason, sitting near a fire, chisel in hand, the cold sea wind outside, the smell of peat smoke, the rhythm of waves against rock. Maybe he carved it for fun, maybe as a gift, and when he finished, he smiled, because his creation smiled back. That small act of creation connects us across centuries. In a time when life was hard and uncertain, art like this was a spark of joy, a way of saying I'm still here. The village where it was found would have been small, a handful of stone houses, smoke curling from turf roofs, children playing in the grass, and fishermen pulling nets from the sea. To them the world was full of mystery. They believed the sea was alive, that stones could hear prayers, and that faces carved in rock could protect their families. And perhaps when the storms came, someone would look up at that little carved smile and feel safer. Today the head sits in a glass case in the Orkney Museum. Visitors stop, look, and often laugh softly, not at it, but with it, because it feels strangely modern. It feels human. Even scientists studying it admit there's something warm about it, something that refuses to fade. It's easy to imagine the centuries that passed while it waited underground, storms, tides, generations living and dying above it, until one day it resurfaced again, ready to meet new eyes. That's what makes it special. It isn't a symbol of power or wealth. It's a reminder that history isn't only built by kings or warriors, it's also built by ordinary people who made things with their hands and hearts. The Orkney carved head is one of those quiet relics that tells you more about humanity than any grand monument ever could. It shows us that humor, creativity, and warmth existed even in the coldest corners of the medieval world. As night falls over the Orkney Islands today, the sea still roars against the cliffs, the grass still bends under the same endless wind, and somewhere in the museum, behind glass and gentle light, that stone face still smiles, just as it did when the craftsman first placed it down 700 years ago. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the echo of laughter, the scratch of a chisel, the murmur of stories told beside the fire. Time has taken everything else, the people, the houses, the language, but not the smile. That remains. The lost legacy behind the pink granite door. In the desert sands of Saqqara, south of Cairo, lies a place where the past never sleeps. Every grain of sand seems to guard a secret. Whispers of pharaohs, priests, and princes who once walked under the blazing Egyptian sun. Among those buried memories, archaeologists recently uncovered something both haunting and extraordinary. A false door, carved from rare pink granite, belonging to a royal prince long forgotten by time. It wasn't the grand discovery of a tomb filled with gold. It wasn't a pyramid towering over the horizon. It was a single doorway, beautifully carved, perfectly aligned, and impossibly smooth even after 4,000 years, and yet it led nowhere. Behind it, only solid stone. Still, to the ancient Egyptians, this was not strange. To them, a false door wasn't meant to open to the living world. It was the boundary between two realms, the passage where the dead could step through to receive offerings from the living. The door was found deep within the sprawling necropolis of Saqqara, a place known for secrets of the Old Kingdom. It belonged to a prince, a son of a pharaoh, whose name has been partially lost to history. The hieroglyphs etched into the stone spoke of noble blood, of divine duties, and of a title that once carried weight in the royal court. But for thousands of years no one had spoken that prince's name. The sands had covered his memory, sealing his legacy in silence. When the archaeologists brushed the dust away, the pink hue of the granite shimmered faintly under the desert light. It was a rare kind of stone, costly, difficult to carve, and reserved only for the most honored figures. To shape granite by hand, the craftsmen of that era used nothing more than copper tools, sand, and patience beyond comprehension. Each line, each inscription, was made by hours of labor and devotion. This wasn't just a monument, it was a message, sent across millennia, saying, "Remember me." The carvings told more than a name, they told a story. Depictions of the prince seated before an offering table, servants bringing bread, beer, and oxen, hieroglyphic prayers calling upon gods of the afterlife to grant him peace, sustenance, and eternal life. Every symbol carved into that stone was a key meant to guide the spirit through the invisible gate between life and death. To the ancient Egyptians, death wasn't the end. It was a transition, a journey into another world, where one continued to live, eat, and feel, if the rituals were done right. And this false door was the prince's portal, a spiritual doorway, allowing his ka, or life force, to return and receive what the living offered. But there was something unusual about this door. The inscriptions, though royal, hinted at someone whose name had been erased or changed. Some hieroglyphs seemed deliberately damaged, as if time or politics had tried to erase him from memory. Egyptologists believe that perhaps this prince fell out of favor, or his lineage was overshadowed by another branch of the royal family, and so his tomb was forgotten, his story buried beneath layers of shifting sand. Yet, even in silence, the stone endured. For over 4,000 years, it waited. The desert winds polished its face, the sun bleached its surface, but the lines of the hieroglyphs remained, stubborn, graceful, and alive. When modern archaeologists uncovered it, they realized that this wasn't just a doorway, it was a chapter of history that had escaped destruction, a message from a man who refused to disappear completely. Standing before it today, the false door feels strangely alive. You can almost imagine the rituals that once took place here. Priests dressed in linen, carrying incense, reciting prayers in the flickering light of oil lamps. Families bringing food and drink to lay before the doorway, believing that their ancestor would step through the stone to accept their offerings. To them, this door was not decoration. It was a living bridge between their world and the next. Even the pink granite carries meaning. In ancient Egypt, color held deep symbolism. Pink and red tones were associated with vitality, with the energy of the sun and rebirth. To carve a door from such a stone was to ensure that the spirit behind it would live eternally, renewed each morning as the sun rose over the desert. It's humbling to think that these beliefs survived for thousands of years. Generations passed, dynasties rose and fell, yet the people of the Nile kept building doors for the dead, not to keep them away, but to let them come home. Archaeologists studying the site also uncovered fragments of painted limestone, pottery, and small offering vessels around the door, all signs that this place had been visited long after the prince's burial, perhaps by descendants or priests maintaining ancient rituals. Even when his name was lost, the memory of the place persisted, proof that remembrance can exist even without identity. Every mark on that door tells of care, craftsmanship, and faith. It's not just an artifact, it's an expression of love for the dead, love for continuity, love for something greater than the human lifespan. Even as empires faded and languages changed, the door remained, a witness to everything that came after. Today it rests safely within an archaeological zone, protected from the harsh sun and drifting sand. Researchers continue to study its inscriptions, hoping to reconstruct the prince's forgotten lineage. Each new translation brings them closer to restoring a life that history tried to erase. When they shine soft light across the granite, the carved hieroglyphs flicker gently, as though the past itself is breathing again. It's a hauntingly beautiful sight. The stone, silent yet eloquent, stands as a reminder that memory can survive even when all else has vanished. The false door of Saqqara is more than just a monument, it's a symbol of how deeply humans desire to be remembered. It reminds us that even when kingdoms fall and names are lost, something of us, a mark, a carving, a story, endures. The prince who once ordered this door could never have known that thousands of years later, strangers from another age would look upon it and feel something familiar: respect, curiosity, a sense of connection that bridges all the years between us. And so, under the Egyptian sky, the pink granite still glows faintly at sunset. The desert winds carry whispers across the dunes, as though repeating prayers from another time. The false door remains closed, but perhaps that's how it was meant to be, because its purpose was never to open. Its purpose was to remind us that remembrance, like stone, can last forever. The spirit in the lake, the carved face of the Slavs. In the quiet stillness of a northern lake, surrounded by dense forest and drifting mist, something waited beneath the water for 1,000 years. It was carved by human hands, shaped with belief, and then hidden away, not lost but resting. When archaeologists finally brought it to the surface, what they held was more than an artifact. It was a face, a wooden face, ancient and solemn, its features softened by water and time, eyes wide, mouth faintly curved, and a presence that felt both human and otherworldly. The discovery took place in Poland, in a lake that once sat near the edge of the early Slavic world. It was found not during a grand expedition, but quietly, by divers exploring what they thought were simple remnants of fishing posts. Among the reeds and layers of silt, they uncovered a carved wooden figure nearly 2 meters tall, its head bearing the unmistakable features of a stylized human. The lines were primitive yet intentional. Even after centuries underwater, the figure's expression was serene, commanding, almost watchful, as though it had been left there to guard something unseen. Dating revealed it to be over 2,000 years old, likely from the early Iron Age, a time when the ancestors of the Slavic peoples were forming the roots of a belief system that bound their lives to nature, to the seasons, and to the spirits that they believed moved between them. The face wasn't decoration, it was a god, or perhaps a guardian, a being meant to watch over the water, the forest, and the people who lived near its edge. To the early Slavs, the world was alive. Every tree, every stone, every river had a soul. They didn't build temples from stone like the Greeks or the Egyptians. Their sanctuaries were groves, riversides, and hilltops where wind and silence carried the presence of the divine. Wood was their sacred material, breathing, growing, and dying just like them. So when they carved faces into it, they believed those faces became alive. The wooden idols were not symbols of gods. They were the gods, inhabited by spirit, through prayer and offering. The carved figure from the lake shows traces of red pigment, faint, nearly invisible now, but proof that once it was painted, perhaps even adorned with flowers or fabrics, it might have stood upright at the water's edge, reflecting its image in the still surface each morning, a silent sentinel watching over fishermen, travelers, and those who came to give thanks. Then one day, it was placed into the lake itself, not discarded but returned. To submerge such a sacred object was an act of reverence, a ritual offering, a way of sending the god back to the realm it came from. Imagine the ceremony, a summer evening long ago, when the forest was full of sound, insects, birds, the rustle of leaves. The people gather at the shore, carrying torches. They speak softly, chanting old words that no one alive can now translate. They lower the wooden figure into the water, watching as it sinks slowly beneath the surface, its eyes disappearing into the dark reflection. The firelight dances across the ripples, and for a moment it feels as though the lake itself is breathing. To them it wasn't an ending, it was a continuation, the god returning home, the spirit of the water reclaiming what was once given form by human hands. For centuries the carved face slept there, undisturbed by the rise and fall of kingdoms, by wars, by time itself. Fish swam past it, silt covered it like a blanket, and above the seasons passed in quiet repetition, winters of ice, summers of light, the eternal rhythm of life moving on. When it was finally found, the divers who brought it up described an eerie calm, as though the lake had been holding its breath for centuries and finally exhaled. As the wooden face broke the surface, droplets sliding from its eyes, it looked as if the ancient god had awakened, blinking at the modern world. Conservationists had to work carefully. Wood preserved underwater is delicate. Exposed too quickly to air, it can crumble, split, or vanish entirely. So the figure was placed in a controlled bath, slowly drying, allowing the moisture that had kept it intact for centuries to leave without destroying its form. Under soft light in a preservation lab, the face became clear again. Every groove of the carving, every subtle line of the nose and brow, told of a hand that once worked carefully, maybe with simple stone tools, but with deep intent. Who carved it? Was it a craftsman, a shaman, a villager who felt called by something larger than himself? No one knows, but whoever it was, he created something that outlived his people, his language, and perhaps even his gods. Scholars studying the figure noticed that its proportions were strikingly human, but its expression was not. The eyes, slightly wide, seem to hold both life and distance, like a being that watches but does not judge. The mouth is simple, neither smiling nor stern. It's the kind of expression that belongs to something eternal, something that exists beyond human emotion. To the Slavs, the spirit world wasn't separated from daily life. The same god who ruled the river also brought storms. The same forest spirit that protected travelers could just as easily mislead them. So a carving like this might not represent one single deity, but the balance of forces, creation and destruction, kindness and power, life and death, all reflected in one wooden face. When the figure was displayed in a museum, people reported feeling something unusual while standing before it. Not fear, not unease, but a quiet awareness, as if being watched gently. The air seemed heavier, the silence more meaningful. Even stripped from its sacred context, the carving still carried presence, and that presence perhaps is the last echo of the belief it once embodied. In a world before organized religion, before temples of stone, there was still reverence, there was still the need to connect with something greater, to thank the unseen, to protect the living through faith and ritual. This figure, this carved wooden face, is proof that humans have always searched for meaning beyond themselves. Even when they didn't write books or build monuments, they left traces of belief in wood, in water, in the spaces between worlds. As we look into those ancient eyes today, it's impossible not to feel a strange kinship. Across centuries, we still build symbols, we still create faces, images, and stories to give form to what we cannot understand. And maybe, like the Slavs of long ago, we still leave our offerings, not in lakes or rivers, but in the quiet spaces of our hearts, hoping that something beyond us is listening. The carved face from the lake is not just a relic, it's a mirror, a reminder that humanity's oldest instinct is not survival, but connection with each other, with nature, and with the mysteries we can never fully name. The wood may have softened, the paint may have faded, but the spirit remains, still watching, still waiting, just as it did when the world was young. World's oldest boomerang found in Poland, more than 40,000 years old. In the quiet hills of southern Poland, where the wind moves gently through limestone cliffs, lies a cave that holds a story frozen in time. This is Oblazova Cave, a place that for tens of thousands of years has been untouched, preserving the life and ingenuity of humans from the Ice Age. Here, among scattered bones and fragments of ancient tools, archaeologists uncovered something extraordinary, a boomerang, carved not from wood, but from the ivory of a mammoth. This is no ordinary artifact. This is the oldest known boomerang in the world, a testament to a level of understanding and skill that stretches back more than 40,000 years. Imagine the person who made it. A human, living in a frozen landscape, surrounded by mammoths and reindeer, wrapped in furs, moving cautiously through snow and ice. They picked up a dense curved tusk, and with stone tools, they shaped it carefully, inch by inch. They had a vision. They understood something that still amazes us today, how this curved piece of ivory could fly through the air, spin and return. It is a remarkable insight into human ingenuity. Even in a time when survival demanded all your attention, someone paused to experiment, to create, to understand forces of motion and balance. This artifact challenges our assumptions. We often think of early humans as purely focused on survival, struggling against the elements, hunting and gathering. But this boomerang tells a different story. It tells us that curiosity, innovation, and play were as ancient as fire itself. The Gravettian people who lived in this region were masterful hunters and skilled artisans. They painted on cave walls, carved delicate figurines, and made tools of bone, stone, and ivory. And now we see that they also understood aerodynamics. The curve of the boomerang is precise. Every line, every groove was intentional. Tests with replicas have shown that when thrown correctly, it could glide smoothly through the air, even returning to the thrower, much like modern boomerangs. Why create something like this? Some experts suggest it was a tool for hunting small animals, birds, rabbits, or other prey, a device to extend their reach, to catch what might otherwise escape. Others propose it held ritual or symbolic value. Perhaps it was a demonstration of skill, a way to teach younger members of the group, a measure of status among peers. Every possibility reminds us that these were humans not unlike ourselves, curious, inventive, and capable of imagination. The making of this boomerang would have taken time and patience. The tusk had to be selected carefully, carved with tools sharpened from stone, polished and shaped until it was perfectly balanced. To achieve this, the maker would have needed a deep understanding of materials and flight, knowledge gained through observation, trial, and refinement over time. Imagine a cold evening, tens of thousands of years ago. As the sun dips below the horizon, a figure steps into the snow outside the cave, holding the newly carved boomerang. They throw it gently. It spins, arcs through the air, and lands softly in the snow. A small triumph in the quiet of the Ice Age, a moment of mastery that echoes through time to us now. Nearby, the cave held other traces of life, bones of hunted animals, fragments of tools, and personal ornaments. These discoveries allow us to reconstruct a picture of the Gravettian people. They were resourceful, creative, and highly adaptive. The boomerang is just one piece of this complex puzzle, a reminder that even in extreme conditions, humans found ways to innovate, to create, and to imagine beyond the immediate struggle for survival. This discovery also reshapes our understanding of technological history. Previously, it was thought that such advanced flying tools originated elsewhere, much later in human development. Yet here, in the heart of Ice Age Europe, a culture long forgotten by time demonstrated principles of physics, engineering, and craft that we are still in awe of today. The boomerang, carved from mammoth tusk, serves as a bridge between past and present. It connects us to a person who lived tens of thousands of years ago, who shaped ivory, understood air currents, and created a tool that combined function, precision, and perhaps even beauty. It is both a weapon and a work of art, a practical device and a symbol of human curiosity. In every groove, every curve, there is a story of the climate, the animals, the people, and the landscape. Each throw imagined, each skill learned, each experiment conducted, is frozen in this single object. It tells us that innovation is not bound by time, that even when survival was a daily challenge, humans found ways to think, create, and invent. As you imagine the Oblazova boomerang, consider the hands that shaped it, strong, patient, and careful. The environment they lived in was harsh, demanding constant attention and adaptation. Yet in the midst of survival, there was room for thought, play, and imagination. This artifact reminds us that humans have always been more than their circumstances. We have always sought to understand the world, to manipulate it, and to make our mark, no matter how fleeting or enduring. The boomerang is now safely preserved, its shape maintained for us to study, to admire, and to reflect upon. It speaks to us not only about early humans and their skill, but also about the timeless spark of curiosity that defines our species. It's more than a tool, it is a story, a whisper from the Ice Age, carried through millennia to our eyes today. And as you listen, consider the connection, across time, across space, and across the endless span of human history. A simple piece of carved ivory tells us everything about invention, patience, and the enduring brilliance of the human mind. Whale tooth at Copper Age megasite reveals ancient Iberia's connection to the sea. Along the rugged coastline of southern Iberia, where waves break softly against limestone cliffs, archaeologists have uncovered a treasure that has rewritten a small corner of history. It is a single whale tooth, smooth, polished by centuries of contact with water and human hands, found deep within the ruins of a Copper Age megasite. At first glance, it is a simple object, yet its significance is profound. This tooth was not local. It could not have been gathered from nearby shores, for whales of that kind were not common in these waters. Its presence in a settlement far from the ocean tells a story of connection, trade, and maritime knowledge in a time long before we thought such networks existed. Imagine the people who first brought this tooth inland, carefully carrying it through forests and over hills, past rivers and rocky terrain. They understood its value, both practical and symbolic. Carefully carrying it through forests and over hills, past rivers and rocky terrain. They understood its value, both practical and symbolic. The megasite itself was a center of activity, sprawling over several hectares. It was a place where families lived, feasted, and crafted their tools and ornaments. Within its walls, archaeologists have discovered pottery, copper implements, and personal adornments, but the whale tooth stands apart. It suggests that these communities were not isolated. They were connected to distant shores, to oceans, to creatures that moved through waters far beyond their own fields and rivers. The tooth is remarkable in its preservation, carved perhaps into a pendant, or shaped as part of a ritual object. It shows evidence of careful handling. Microscopic analysis reveals wear patterns, polished edges, and incisions that suggest it was cherished. It was a symbol of status, a talisman, or a tool imbued with meaning. To hold it today is to touch a piece of a world that existed more than 4,000 years ago, where humans looked out toward the horizon and wondered about the vastness of the seas. The Copper Age people of Iberia were innovators in their own right. They were learning to work metals, to domesticate animals, to cultivate the land with careful planning and observation. Yet even as they mastered life on land, they sought a connection to the sea, to the unknown, to the creatures that inhabited waters far from their villages. The whale tooth embodies that desire, a tangible piece of the ocean brought inland, bridging distance, nature, and human curiosity. Archaeologists studying this find have traced possible routes that could have brought the tooth to the site. They imagine a journey along the Mediterranean coast, through narrow valleys and along river paths, carried by hands that understood its rarity and importance. This was not merely transport, it was intention, a deliberate act of bringing the distant and the extraordinary into everyday life. Such objects also carry ritual significance. Many prehistoric cultures revered the sea, its creatures, and the forces beyond human control. Whale teeth, with their strength and size, were often symbolic of power, endurance, and connection to spiritual realms. Perhaps this tooth was a gift, an offering, or a mark of a social bond that tied communities together across space. It was a reminder that humans have always sought meaning in the natural world, finding magic, symbolism, and story in objects that might seem ordinary to us today. Within the megasite, the tooth lay alongside other artifacts, but it spoke differently. Pottery bore patterns of daily life. Tools revealed survival strategies. Jewelry reflected personal identity. The whale tooth reflected something larger: imagination, ambition, and a reach beyond the immediate landscape. It shows that these communities were aware of distant lands, capable of communication, exchange, and perhaps even long voyages. Consider the moment when it was first deposited here, thousands of years ago. Perhaps it was placed in a ceremonial context, alongside the remains of the dead, or within a communal hall where villagers gathered to celebrate, mourn, or make decisions. The tooth would have drawn attention, sparking conversations about the sea, the creatures within it, and the people who lived far away. It was a conversation across time and space, preserved until modern archaeologists could uncover it. The whale tooth reminds us of human curiosity. Even in a world dominated by survival challenges, harsh winters, scarce food, and unpredictable weather, people looked beyond, imagining, exploring, and connecting. It tells us that networks of trade and exchange existed far earlier than we often assume, and that ancient humans were capable of incredible foresight, planning, and cultural expression. As we examine this tooth today, using advanced technology and careful analysis, we gain insight not only into its origin, but into the worldview of its owners. They understood value, rarity, and beauty. They understood how to carry meaning from one place to another, and they remind us that even the smallest artifact can illuminate an entire civilization, its ambitions, and its reach. The discovery also challenges modern perceptions of prehistoric life. These were not isolated, primitive communities. They were imaginative, resourceful, and deeply connected to their environment, land, river, and sea alike. The whale tooth is a testament to that vision, a whisper from the past that reaches out across millennia. Holding this ivory polished by human hands, we can almost feel the journey it took from ocean to village, from living whale to crafted object. It bridges the natural and cultural worlds, symbolizing the connection humans have always sought with forces greater than themselves. And as you imagine the Copper Age people of Iberia, carrying, using, and cherishing this whale tooth, think of the conversations it inspired, the awe it created, and the stories that accompanied it. This object, small yet powerful, embodies the essence of human curiosity and ingenuity. It is a reminder that even in the distant past, humans sought to understand the world beyond their own horizon, to connect with distant places, and to leave a mark that would echo for thousands of years. The whale tooth, now safely preserved in a museum, continues to speak. Its silent message is one of connection, imagination, and wonder. It reminds us that the human mind has always reached beyond the immediate, and that even in the most challenging conditions, creativity and curiosity endure. This single artifact tells a story of travel, trade, and human ingenuity, bridging past and present, land and sea, survival and imagination. And as you consider its journey, you can feel a sense of calm, a sense of wonder, and an understanding that the world has always been full of surprises, waiting patiently for us to discover them. 1,000-year-old pre-Inca mummy from Chanche civilization, unearthed in Lima. In the arid hills near Lima, Peru, Archaeologists recently uncovered a discovery that has captured the quiet fascination of history enthusiasts around the world. Nestled within a burial chamber of the Chanche civilization, a pre-Inca culture that thrived along the central coast of Peru a millennium ago, lay a mummy. At first glance it is a simple human form, wrapped carefully in textiles, yet it holds a wealth of stories about life, death, and the traditions of people long vanished. The Chanche were masters of textile artistry. Their weaving, intricate and delicate, often incorporated symbolic motifs, patterns representing the natural world, and the cosmological ideas of the community. This mummy was no exception. The individual was wrapped in layers of fine cloth, decorated with geometric patterns, and dyed with colors that have survived remarkably well despite the centuries. These patterns are more than decoration. They are messages, echoes of the beliefs, status, and identity of the person beneath. Archaeologists believe this mummy was a figure of significance. The care and burial suggests not only respect, but also a spiritual understanding of the afterlife. Objects were found alongside the body: small ceramic vessels, woven bags, and personal adornments, each chosen with intention. Some contained food, perhaps to sustain the individual in the journey beyond life. Others were symbolic, reflecting the social status, profession, or family ties of the deceased. The climate of the region, dry and stable, played a crucial role in the preservation of this remarkable find. Centuries of aridity allowed the textiles to remain intact, and the body to resist the slow decay that usually claims organic matter. In many ways, the mummy is a time capsule. It allows us to glimpse the daily life, spiritual beliefs, and cultural sophistication of the Chanche civilization in a way that few other archaeological finds can. To understand the significance of this mummy, it is essential to consider the Chanche people themselves. Flourishing between approximately 1000 and 1470 AD, they were skilled in agriculture, managing irrigation systems to cultivate crops along the coastal valleys. They were adept artisans, producing pottery, textiles, and metalwork of striking quality. Their society, although not as widely known as the Inca who followed them, had complex rituals, deep spiritual beliefs, and social structures that supported communal life. The burial of this mummy sheds light on those beliefs. In life, the Chanche celebrated the cycles of nature, the rhythm of agriculture, and the celestial bodies that guided planting and harvesting. In death, they honored the individual with care, ensuring that their journey beyond this world was marked by respect and provisions for the next. The mummy was not alone. It was accompanied by these offerings, as if the community intended to preserve their presence in both the physical and spiritual realms. Close examination of the mummy reveals the skill of Chanche textile artisans. Threads, dyed in hues derived from natural minerals and plants, are woven into complex patterns. Tiny stitches, almost invisible to the naked eye, reveal the patience and precision required to create these layers. In some cases, textiles are layered one atop another, creating both warmth and protection, a symbolic and practical method to safeguard the body for eternity. In addition to the textile wrapping, evidence of ceremonial practices surrounds the burial site. Archaeologists found traces of incense and small ritual objects placed with the body. These practices suggest that the Chanche viewed death not as an end, but as a passage. The careful attention to burial, the symbolic objects, and the spiritual gestures all point to a culture deeply attuned to the unseen world and to the belief that the deceased continued to exist in another form, perhaps guiding or watching over the living. The discovery of this mummy also prompts questions about the social structure of the Chanche civilization. Who was this individual? A leader? A revered elder? Perhaps a member of an artisan family responsible for weaving and crafting the textiles that remain so beautifully preserved. The accompanying artifacts may offer clues: pots with distinctive designs, small personal ornaments, or ceremonial objects indicating rank or role within the society. Each piece, carefully placed, tells a story of a life that mattered, a life remembered. Technological analysis, including radiocarbon dating and textile examination, has confirmed the age of the burial at roughly 1000 years. The findings reveal not only the timeline of the Chanche civilization, but also insights into their trade networks, resource acquisition, and material culture. Some of the dyes and materials used in the textiles suggest connections to regions beyond the immediate coastal valleys, hinting at interactions with neighboring communities. Holding this knowledge, we can imagine the individual's life, waking each morning to the soft light over the valleys, tending to crops or livestock, crafting intricate textiles, engaging in communal ceremonies, and observing the cycles of the sun and moon. And when death approached, being enveloped with care, placed among objects imbued with meaning, and watched over by those who loved and respected them. The mummy stands as a testament to the Chanche's understanding of mortality and continuity. It reminds us that even a culture overshadowed by later empires had its sophistication, its artistry, and its humanity. Through this burial, we hear echoes of a society that valued beauty, ritual, and connection, both to the land and to the spiritual world. This single discovery, a 1,000-year-old mummy, carries with it centuries of stories waiting to be interpreted. It invites us to consider the lives of people long gone, to respect their artistry, their rituals, and their beliefs. And as we study the mummy today, we gain a greater appreciation for the complexity of pre-Inca civilizations and the enduring human desire to leave a mark, to be remembered, and to bridge life and death with care and intention. The Chancey mummy is more than an artifact. It is a link to the past, a silent teacher, a reminder that even in distant centuries, humans thought deeply about life, death, and the continuity of community. As we consider this discovery, we can let our minds drift slowly into the rhythms of ancient life, following the careful hands of artisans, the solemnity of rituals, and the enduring respect of a civilization that lived, worked, and dreamed along the coasts of Peru. And in that quiet reflection, we find a sense of calm, a sense of connection, and a reminder that history is alive, not only in grand monuments, but in the careful, deliberate gestures of people who lived, loved, and honored one another long ago. 2,000-year-old Roman frescoes unearthed in London. Beneath the bustling streets of London, where the hum of modern life conceals layers of history, archaeologists have recently uncovered a remarkable glimpse into a world 2 millennia removed from our own. Hidden beneath centuries of soil, stone, and urban development, a collection of Roman frescoes has emerged, fragile yet vibrantly preserved. At first glance, they may seem like fragments of paint on plaster, simple decorations long forgotten. But as the experts carefully remove the layers of dirt and modern detritus, a story begins to emerge, one of artistry, daily life, and the enduring human desire to create beauty that withstands time. The frescoes, dating to around 2,000 years ago, are not just ornamental, they are windows into Roman domestic life, revealing scenes of mythology, gardens, and banquets. Each brushstroke carries a message, a reflection of cultural values, aesthetic preferences, and the skill of artisans who labored meticulously to decorate the homes of the Roman elite. The colors, though muted by time, still whisper of the vibrancy that once filled these spaces. Reds, blues, and ochres depict gods, animals, and floral motifs in a harmony of design that suggests both sophistication and care. Uncovering these frescoes is like assembling a puzzle, whose pieces have been scattered across centuries. Portions of walls collapsed, plaster crumbled, and modern construction obscured the original surfaces. Every fragment must be carefully documented, stabilized, and studied. Conservators work with delicate tools, brushing away centuries of dust and sediment, revealing patterns hidden for generations. Each new discovery offers a tiny insight into the past, a clue about how Romans lived, what they valued, and how they expressed their identity through art. The scenes themselves are intriguing. One panel shows a banquet, with figures reclining on couches, sharing food and wine. Their gestures and expressions, rendered with subtle attention to detail, suggest a story frozen in time, an ordinary evening, yet transformed by the skill of the painter into something that endures across millennia. Nearby, another fragment depicts gods and mythical creatures, intertwining with geometric patterns and floral designs. These images speak to the cultural literacy of the household, the knowledge of mythology, and the ways in which Romans merged everyday life with spiritual and symbolic meaning. The excavation site, located in central London, has also revealed the architectural context of the frescoes. They adorned the walls of a domus, a Roman house belonging to someone of considerable wealth and status. The layout of the rooms, the positioning of windows, and the orientation of the frescoes all suggest careful planning. Artisans worked not only to decorate walls, but to integrate their designs into the rhythm of daily life. Every color, line, and figure was chosen with intention, enhancing the experience of living in the space. Archaeologists and art historians emphasize that the significance of these frescoes goes beyond their aesthetic appeal. They offer insight into Roman construction methods, pigment sources, and trade networks. Some of the mineral pigments found in the plaster, for example, are thought to have been imported from distant regions, indicating connections that span the Mediterranean. The frescoes are not merely art, they are evidence of the complexity and reach of Roman society, the mobility of ideas and materials, and the enduring human desire to surround oneself with beauty. The process of uncovering and conserving the frescoes is slow and deliberate. Specialists must work patiently, removing only what is necessary to prevent damage. In some cases, modern layers of paint or plaster added over centuries obscure the original work, requiring careful chemical analysis and testing to determine the safest method of exposure. Each step is measured, ensuring that the frescoes are revealed without risking harm, allowing us to appreciate them as closely as possible to how they were originally experienced. As the frescoes come into view, one cannot help but imagine the people who once inhabited the house. Their daily routines, their celebrations, their moments of leisure, and their intimate lives are now partially visible through the art they commissioned. The murals are more than decoration. They are echoes of human presence, traces of emotion, intention, and the timeless wish to leave something behind. Even the smallest details captivate the imagination. A tiny flower in a corner, a curve of a reclining arm, the tilt of a head, all elements convey a narrative that transcends time. Scholars study these details to reconstruct the lives, tastes, and social structures of the Roman period in London, building a picture of a community that existed long before the streets were paved with asphalt and the skyline filled with modern towers. The frescoes also challenge us to consider the fragility of history. So much has been lost to decay, neglect, and urban expansion. What survives is precious, a gift from the past preserved against all odds. Every brushstroke reminds us that human creativity, though vulnerable, has the power to endure when treated with care and respect. In the quiet moments of examination, when the bustling city above seems distant, it is possible to imagine stepping into the world of these frescoes. The light filtering through ancient windows, the faint scent of oil lamps, the soft murmur of conversation, and the presence of figures immortalized in pigment, all combine to form a vision of the past that feels tangible and alive. The discovery in London is a testament to human curiosity and perseverance. Archaeologists, conservators, and historians have dedicated countless hours to uncovering and preserving these works, ensuring that the knowledge and beauty they contain will not be lost again. It is a reminder that beneath every modern street, every building, and every familiar landscape, there may lie treasures awaiting discovery, whispering stories of the people who came before us. These Roman frescoes, complex, delicate, and evocative, allow us to connect with a distant past. They remind us of the shared human desire to create, to decorate, to celebrate life, and to leave behind a legacy that endures. They offer a quiet, contemplative space in which we can reflect on history, artistry, and the passage of time. And as we consider the frescoes, let our minds drift gently across centuries, imagining the hands that painted them, the rooms that housed them, and the lives that intersected with their presence. In that calm, reflective space, we find both wonder and tranquility, a bridge across time that invites us to pause, breathe, and appreciate the artistry, ingenuity, and humanity that has endured for 2,000 years. New Denisovan fossil found off coast of Taiwan. Along the misty coastlines of Taiwan, where waves gently lap against jagged rocks and the wind carries the distant song of the ocean, a discovery has emerged that deepens our understanding of human history. Beneath layers of soil, sediment, and time, scientists have uncovered a jawbone belonging to the Denisovans, an ancient group of humans whose existence was long shrouded in mystery. This small fragment of bone, seemingly fragile and unassuming, is a doorway into a world that existed tens of thousands of years before our modern cities, roads, and buildings came to dominate the landscape. The Denisovans were first identified in the remote Denisova cave in Siberia, known largely through tiny fragments of bone and teeth. Their presence across Asia has been a puzzle, and each new fossil adds pieces to a story that spans continents and millennia. This jawbone, carefully excavated from coastal deposits off Taiwan, offers a rare opportunity to understand their anatomy, their movement, and the environments in which they lived. It is both delicate and resilient, a testament to the preservation of history by nature itself, protected by layers of earth until the right moment brought it into human hands. Archaeologists and paleoanthropologists approach the site with patient precision. Using brushes, trowels, and fine instruments, they removed the sediment surrounding the fossil, ensuring that every tiny fragment remained intact. As the jawbone emerged, the contours of the bone, the shape of the teeth, and subtle details in its structure began to tell a story of diet, survival, and adaptation. It was a silent story, written in bone rather than in words, and it required careful interpretation, a dialogue between the past and the present. The jawbone provides insight into the unique characteristics of the Denisovans. Their dental patterns, robust structure, and certain anatomical features distinguish them from both Neanderthals and modern humans. Each measurement, each observation, contributes to an ever-evolving understanding of human diversity in prehistoric Asia. While fragments alone cannot convey the full story of their lives, they allow researchers to trace migration patterns, understand interactions with other human species, and explore the ways in which Denisovans adapted to varied environments, from the cold mountains of Siberia to the warmer coastal regions of East Asia. The context of the discovery is just as intriguing as the fossil itself. Coastal areas often preserve ancient remains in ways inland sites cannot, with sedimentary layers offering protection from erosion and time. Here the jawbone rested for tens of thousands of years, silently bearing witness to the shifting tides, changing climates, and the slow accumulation of history. When researchers carefully documented the site, they noted the presence of stone tools, shells, and other signs of human activity, suggesting that Denisovans may have occupied, or at least traversed this coastal landscape, gathering resources, and perhaps observing the ocean that now hides so many of its secrets beneath gentle waves. Studying the fossil requires both patience and advanced technology. Micro-CT scans, isotopic analysis, and comparisons with previously discovered Denisovan remains allow scientists to reconstruct aspects of diet, health, and even developmental patterns. It is a slow, meticulous process, demanding focus and care. as each small observation adds depth to the narrative of a species that lived, adapted, and left traces long before recorded history. In this careful work, one can almost feel the presence of the Denisovans, the quiet rhythm of their daily lives, the challenges they faced in a changing world, and the ingenuity required to survive. What makes this discovery particularly remarkable is the light it sheds on Denisovan distribution. Until recently, evidence of their existence was sparse and localized. Fossils and genetic data suggested they lived primarily in Central and Eastern Asia, but the jawbone from Taiwan expands our understanding, hinting at broader migration patterns and interactions with other early humans. It reminds us that our understanding of the past is never complete, and that each new finding, however small, has the potential to reshape long-held assumptions about human evolution. The human story is not only told in bones, it is told in the spaces we inhabit, in the tools we craft, and in the marks we leave on the world around us. The jawbone invites us to imagine the Denisovans walking along coastal cliffs, gathering seafood, observing the horizon, and living lives both ordinary and extraordinary. Each tooth, each curve of bone, reflects the choices they made, the foods they ate, and the resilience that allowed them to thrive in diverse landscapes. As researchers continue to analyze the fossil, they uncover more than just physical characteristics. DNA extraction and sequencing provide glimpses into ancestry, potential relationships with Neanderthals, and even contributions to the genetic makeup of modern human populations. Some living people carry traces of Denisovan DNA, subtle reminders of encounters that took place tens of thousands of years ago. This jawbone is a bridge, connecting us to a lineage that is at once distant and intimately entwined with our own story. The process of discovery is slow and deliberate. Every step is measured, every movement cautious, preserving the fragile connection to the past. Photographs, 3D scans, and careful notes ensure that even if the fossil itself were lost, the knowledge it imparts would endure. In this way, science honors both the physical remains and the lives they represent. Holding the fossil, even metaphorically, one can sense the continuity of human experience. The Denisovans faced challenges, adapted to their environment, and created a life in a world without cities, without written records, without modern conveniences. Yet the traces they left, tools, bones, and now this jawbone, allow us to connect with them, to feel the rhythm of life that existed long before our time. This discovery off the coast of Taiwan reminds us that the past is never completely hidden. It waits patiently, sometimes in unlikely places, for the right moment to emerge and tell its story. Fossils like this jawbone are whispers from history, quiet and measured, revealing insights gradually, patiently, and with great care. They invite us to slow down, to consider the depth of time, and to reflect on the myriad ways humans have lived, adapted, and left their mark on the world. Through careful study, the Denisovan jawbone enriches our understanding of evolution, migration, and the shared history of humanity. It connects distant epochs to the present, blending science with wonder, and reminding us that even the smallest fragment can carry extraordinary significance. As we observe, analyze, and learn, we are drawn into a quiet contemplation of time, survival, and the enduring connections between all human beings, past and present. The jawbone from Taiwan is more than a fossil. It is a narrative frozen in time, a story of life, adaptation, and the resilience of a species that once walked the earth. Through it, we glimpse the intricate web of human evolution, the subtle traces of migration, and the fragile beauty of discovery itself. In the calm of study, in the quiet of observation, we honor the Denisovans and the enduring legacy of our shared ancestry. In that gentle reflection, we are reminded that history is layered, patient, and always waiting. For those who are willing to listen, to observe, and to contemplate, the whispers of the past offer insight, connection, and a quiet sense of wonder that stretches across millennia. The Denisovan jawbone off the coast of Taiwan is such a whisper, small, precise, and yet profoundly powerful. Huge 2,000-year-old elite artifact hoard, unearthed in Yorkshire, along the rolling fields of Yorkshire, where the soft mist settles over meadows and the gentle hum of the countryside stretches into the horizon. A remarkable discovery has quietly emerged, one that offers a window into the lives of people who lived 2 millennia ago. Beneath layers of earth and soil, hidden for centuries, archaeologists uncovered a tangled block of Iron Age artifacts, part of what is now known as the Melsenby hoard. These objects, en masse, were carefully removed to a laboratory, where scientists can study them in detail, seeking to understand not only their purpose, but also the people who once held them, polished them, and used them in daily life. The hoard is extraordinary, not merely for its age, but for the wealth and sophistication it represents. Each artifact, whether a finely worked brooch, a piece of weaponry, or a delicate ornament, tells a story of craft, culture, and status. It is a silent narrative of the Iron Age, revealing the social structures, trade networks, and rituals of a time when life was intimately connected to the land, to survival, and to the people around us. The careful extraction of the hoard was performed with meticulous precision, ensuring that every fragment remained intact. Archaeologists documented the context of each piece, noting its placement, orientation, and relationship to the surrounding soil. These details, though subtle, carry essential clues, allowing researchers to reconstruct the environment in which the artifacts were deposited and the intentions behind their arrangement. As the hoard emerged from the earth, the intertwined objects hinted at the complexity of Iron Age life. Some items display exquisite craftsmanship, their designs intricate and purposeful, revealing the skill of artisans who worked long hours with limited tools. Others show signs of wear, evidence of practical use, of lives lived and work performed. Together they form a mosaic of human experience, offering a rare glimpse into a society that, though distant in time, resonates with familiarity in its devotion to craft, beauty, and symbolism. The laboratory became a space of quiet discovery. Each artifact was gently cleaned, measured, and analyzed. Specialists examined metal composition, traces of use, and stylistic features, piecing together the narrative of an elite class whose possessions reflected both status and identity. The hoard also includes objects that suggest trade and interaction with distant regions, hinting at networks of exchange and influence across Iron Age Britain. These were not isolated communities. They were connected, moving ideas, materials, and techniques across the landscape in ways we are only beginning to fully comprehend. Among the artifacts, certain items stand out for their uniqueness. Decorative brooches and jewelry indicate a sophisticated aesthetic, a desire to convey status and taste. Weapons and tools reflect the practical concerns of everyday life, of protection, work, and survival. Together they form a narrative of human ingenuity, a reminder that even in times we often think of as primitive, creativity and skill flourished, leaving behind traces that still speak to us today. The context of the hoard adds to its intrigue. It appears to have been deliberately deposited, perhaps as an offering, a form of wealth storage, or a ritualistic act. The reasons remain speculative, yet each hypothesis allows us to imagine the lives of those who placed these objects in the earth. Was it a family preserving treasures during turbulent times, a community marking a sacred moment, or perhaps an individual asserting power and influence through carefully curated possessions? Whatever the intent, the act of deposition ensured that these items would endure, silently waiting for the centuries to pass until human hands uncovered them once more. Studying the Melsonby hoard also sheds light on the broader Iron Age culture in Yorkshire and beyond. By comparing these artifacts to similar finds across Britain and Europe, researchers can trace stylistic trends, technological innovations, and cultural connections. Each item is a piece of a larger puzzle, helping us understand not only the specific context of this hoard, but also the wider tapestry of human history during this period. The hoard reminds us that history is layered, patiently waiting beneath our feet. It encourages reflection on the lives of people who walked these same fields, whose hands shaped objects with intention and care. By examining the wear patterns, construction techniques, and decorative choices, we begin to understand their daily rhythms, the work, the ceremonies, and the moments of leisure that define their existence. As the artifacts are carefully catalogued, preserved, and studied, they provide both scientific insight and a quiet opportunity for imagination. One can envision the hands that crafted each piece, the environments they navigated, and the communities they fostered. These objects connect us to a past that is both distant and intimate, a reminder that human experience, our creativity, ingenuity, and desire to leave a mark, remains timeless. The Melsonby hoard, with its dense cluster of artifacts, continues to reveal secrets slowly. Each discovery, each analysis, brings clarity, and yet deepens the mystery, reminding us that the past is not simply a record, but a living story. It invites patience, attention, and contemplation. In the calm of the laboratory, beneath the careful light and steady hands of experts, these ancient treasures whisper their stories, inviting us to listen and to marvel at human history preserved in metal, stone, and earth. For those who follow the journey, the Melsonby hoard is more than a collection of artifacts. It is a connection across time, a silent dialogue between those who lived 2,000 years ago and the people studying them today. Its significance lies not only in its objects, but in its ability to evoke thought, reflection, and a quiet appreciation for the endurance of human ingenuity. In the end, the Yorkshire hoard is a testament to discovery itself, patient, meticulous, and profound. Each artifact, carefully lifted from the soil, invites viewers and researchers alike to slow down, to reflect, and to appreciate the depth of human creativity. It is a reminder that even buried treasures, hidden for centuries, have stories to tell, and when they finally emerge, they speak softly yet powerfully of our shared past, our connections across time, and the enduring legacy of human civilization. The great architects of Mars, is the keyhole structure artificial? Far beyond the familiar blue skies of Earth, there lies a world both alien and strangely familiar. Mars, the red planet, has long captivated the human imagination, inspiring tales of explorers, scientists, and dreamers. Its dusty plains, jagged canyons, and towering volcanoes seem at once desolate and majestic. Yet hidden among its features, there are formations that challenge our understanding, shapes that make us pause and wonder. One of the most enigmatic of these is the so-called keyhole structure, a formation that some claim may not be entirely natural, that might bear the marks of intelligent design. The keyhole structure is located in a remote Martian valley, its outline forming a curious shape resembling a keyhole. When observed from orbit, satellite images reveal sharp angles, unusual alignments, and features that appear almost geometric. Shadows cast at different times of the day reveal depth and intricacy that spark questions among scientists and enthusiasts alike. Could wind and erosion alone create such precision? Or is there something more, evidence of a form of architecture, unlike any found on Earth? Mars is a harsh world. Temperatures swing wildly, the atmosphere is thin and unforgiving, and the surface is constantly reshaped by dust storms, solar radiation, and meteorite impacts. Yet within this challenging environment, the keyhole structure appears remarkably preserved, as if resistant to the relentless forces that have sculpted so much of the Martian landscape. Its central chamber, visible in high-resolution imagery, seems to extend underground, hinting at hidden corridors or cavities that cannot be fully explored from orbit alone. Scientists have approached the formation with caution. Planetary geologists suggest natural explanations: wind erosion, volcanic activity, and the slow deposition of sediments over millions of years. Mars is known for its unusual formations, and many structures initially thought to be artificial have later been explained by geological processes. Still, the keyhole structure resists easy classification. Its symmetry, its scale, and the precise way its components align with surrounding landmarks invite speculation. Could ancient Martians or some other intelligent force have left their mark here long before humanity looked to the stars? Theories abound. Some propose that the formation is a remnant of a lost civilization, one that harnessed the unique properties of the Martian surface. Others suggest it might have been a navigation marker, a monumental beacon for travelers across the planet's barren landscape. And yet, another hypothesis considers it a purely natural structure, sculpted by a combination of volcanic flows, wind erosion, and sedimentary deposition over millions of years. Each idea invites contemplation, encouraging viewers to explore not only the images, but also the possibilities they suggest. Exploring the keyhole structure is not straightforward. Robotic rovers have yet to reach its precise location, and while orbiting satellites provide detailed photographs, they cannot penetrate the underground features hinted at by the shadows and contours. Scientists rely on digital models, simulations of erosion, and comparisons to similar formations on Earth. Through these methods, they attempt to discern the difference between chance alignment and intentional design, between nature's hand and possible intelligence. The intrigue of Mars lies not only in its surface, but also in its history. Evidence of ancient rivers, lakes, and perhaps even oceans suggests that water once flowed freely, shaping the land and perhaps nurturing life in forms we have yet to imagine. Could the keyhole structure be connected to this past, a relic of Martian ingenuity preserved by the planet's dry and cold climate? Its endurance across millennia reminds us that even on worlds far from our own, complexity can emerge, patterns can persist, and mysteries can endure. To gaze at the keyhole structure is to step into a silent dialogue between human curiosity and the cosmos. The formation invites reflection, encouraging viewers to slow down, to observe carefully, and to allow their thoughts to drift among the possibilities. Whether it is the product of natural forces or an artificial creation, it is a testament to the beauty of exploration, the thrill of discovery, and the enduring question of what lies beyond the familiar. Imagining the keyhole structure from above, one can envision delicate channels carved by ancient water flows, shadowed recesses that hint at tunnels, and the stark Martian sky stretching endlessly overhead. The silence of the red planet, broken only by the imagined wind of dust storms and the slow drift of sediment, amplifies the sense of mystery. Every line, every contour of the formation, becomes a whisper from another world, inviting contemplation, curiosity, and wonder. The debate over the keyhole structure also reflects something very human: our desire to find meaning, to recognize patterns, and to explore the unknown. As technology advances, as satellites, drones, and perhaps one day human explorers study Mars in greater detail, we may come closer to answers. For now, the formation remains an enigma, a puzzle waiting for patient observation and thoughtful analysis. Even in its uncertainty, the keyhole structure teaches us to observe carefully, to respect the slow, meticulous processes of nature, and to remain open to possibilities. Whether shaped by wind, water, or intelligence, it reminds us that the universe holds surprises, waiting silently until we are ready to see them. Each moment spent contemplating its shape, its shadows, and its lines becomes a meditation on time, scale, and the persistence of patterns across space and epochs. In this way, the keyhole structure serves as a quiet companion for reflection, a subject that encourages calm focus and the gentle slowing of thought. The red soil, the intricate angles, and the vast expanse surrounding it invite a mind to wander slowly, to imagine, and to rest in wonder. It bridges the distant cosmos with the curiosity of the human mind, reminding us that even far-off worlds can inspire awe, patience, and a sense of calm. For the viewer, the keyhole structure is not simply a mystery, it is a meditation. It encourages imagination, patience, and a quiet appreciation for what is known and what remains unseen. As we observe its contours, speculate on its origin, and imagine its formation across eons, we participate in a gentle dialogue with the universe itself, one that stretches beyond Mars, beyond the present, and into the timeless realm of wonder and discovery. The great architects of Mars, whether real, imagined, or somewhere in between, remind us that exploration is as much about reflection as it is about discovery. The keyhole structure endures, a silent question etched into the surface of a distant world, inviting patience, contemplation, and perhaps a hint of sleep, as the mind drifts among stars, red sands, and the infinite possibilities of the cosmos. Gold amulets and jewelry from Egypt's 26th dynasty found at Karnak temples, amid the timeless sands of Egypt, where the Nile flows steadily toward the Mediterranean. The ancient city of Thebes cradles secrets from millennia past. Its temples rise like stone sentinels against the desert sky, enduring the passage of countless generations. Among these sacred monuments, the Karnak temple complex stands as one of the most impressive feats of human endeavor, its walls etched with the stories of pharaohs, gods, and the people who once walked its grand halls. In recent excavations at Karnak, archaeologists have uncovered a remarkable collection of gold amulets and jewelry, dating to the 26th dynasty. These small, delicate objects, some no larger than a fingertip, hold within them the echoes of a society deeply attuned to symbolism, faith, and beauty. Gold for the Egyptians was more than mere wealth. It was a bridge between the mortal and the divine, a reflection of the eternal radiance of the sun god Ra. Each amulet tells a story. Scarabs, symbols of rebirth and protection, were carefully carved, polished, and imbued with inscriptions meant to safeguard the wearer in life and in the journey beyond death. Tiny figures of deities, falcons, and sacred animals were shaped in gold with astonishing precision, revealing not only the skill of the artisans, but the spiritual devotion that guided their hands. Even the smallest loops and clasps speak to a meticulous attention to detail, a desire to create objects that could endure the ages. The context of their discovery adds another layer of fascination. Many of these amulets were found within temple precincts, hidden in niches, buried under the foundations of walls, or tucked within ceremonial offerings. Some may have been left as votive gifts, tokens of gratitude, or pleas for protection. Others might have been buried with priests, nobles, or pharaohs, placed deliberately to accompany the deceased on their journey to the afterlife. Archaeologists study these pieces not only for their beauty, but for what they reveal about the culture that created them. Inscriptions, motifs, and the choice of symbols illuminate the religious practices, beliefs, and societal priorities of the 26th dynasty. This period, known for its renaissance of Egyptian art and culture, demonstrates both continuity and innovation, blending ancient traditions with fresh interpretations of divine imagery. Gold itself presents a story of endurance, resistant to tarnish, heat, and time. It preserves the delicate artistry of the ancients, offering modern observers a direct connection to craftsmen who lived over 2.5 millennia ago. Holding one of these amulets or even observing it carefully allows us to feel the rhythm of ancient lives, to imagine hands shaping soft metal over tools heated by fire, guided by vision, devotion, and practice, honed over generations. The discovery at Karnak also reminds us that these temples were living spaces, centers of ceremony, economy, and social life. The amulets and jewelry were not simply decorative, they were functional, symbolic, and deeply personal. A priest might wear a pendant invoking protection over the sacred rituals he performed. A noble might leave a golden token within the temple as a gesture of loyalty or hope for divine favor. Each piece becomes a window into the daily, spiritual, and social life of a civilization long gone, yet still vividly present in the artifacts it left behind. As we contemplate these golden treasures, the imagination drifts slowly. We picture the corridors of Karnak, lined with massive columns and shadowed reliefs. The sun filters through the stone, casting long, quiet beams of light across the floor. Perhaps in the soft flicker of candlelight or oil lamps, the amulets gleamed, their surfaces reflecting the devotion of the people who made and used them. We hear the distant echoes of chants and footsteps, the muted rhythm of ceremonial life, and feel a gentle, timeless pulse emanating from the stones themselves. Some pieces show wear, scratches from centuries of handling, reminders that these objects were once part of living rituals, carried by humans who sought comfort, protection, or favor from the divine. Others remain pristine, as if untouched, preserved beneath layers of sand and stone, waiting for modern hands to uncover them and allow their stories to be told once more. The sheer variety of the collection is astounding. From simple circular amulets to elaborate necklaces adorned with tiny pendants and intricate chains, each object reflects a balance of function, aesthetic, and spirituality. Some pieces were meant to hang close to the heart, while others might have been sewn into garments or laid upon altars. Every design decision, every etched line, carries meaning, a silent language from a world distant in time but accessible through careful observation and thoughtful reflection. In considering the 26th dynasty amulets, we are reminded of the human desire to connect with forces beyond ourselves, to seek protection, and to create lasting symbols of belief. Gold was the medium, and artistry was the language, shaping objects that could communicate with gods, ancestors, and the living alike. Their discovery at Karnak invites not only awe, but a gentle contemplation of human devotion, ingenuity, and the persistence of culture through time. As we follow the path of these artifacts from their creation to their rediscovery, it becomes clear that each piece is more than mere gold. They are markers of thought, of ritual, of a civilization's careful weaving of the sacred and the mundane. Holding them in the imagination, the mind drifts slowly along ancient corridors, across sunlit courtyards, and into quiet chambers where the sounds of history whisper softly, inviting reflection and calm. Through the lens of archaeology, the amulets speak across centuries. They teach us about the reverence with which humans approached life and death, about the skill and care invested in crafting objects that endure, and about the universal desire to leave something meaningful behind. And as we trace their journey from creation, to ceremonial use, to burial, and finally to rediscovery, the story becomes a meditation on time, memory, and human connection. For the viewer, these golden treasures of Karnak offer not only insight into a distant civilization, but also an invitation to slow down, to observe, and to drift along with the stories they carry. Their glinting surfaces, etched symbols, and careful designs encourage calm focus, a gentle curiosity, and a sense of continuity across millennia. The 26th dynasty amulets remind us that even in objects small enough to hold in one hand, vast histories reside, and as we linger on their delicate forms, imagining hands that once shaped them, and lives that once treasured them, there is a quiet, enduring sense of connection, a bridge between the ancient and the present, a soft invitation to reflect, to wonder, and to allow the mind to rest gently in the presence of history. Neolithic Europeans buried valuable grinding tools in ritual ceremonies. In the quiet landscapes of Neolithic Europe, long before the rise of cities or written language, people lived in harmony with the land. Rolling fields, dense forests, and gentle rivers formed the backdrop to communities deeply connected to the rhythms of nature. Here, life was shaped by the cycles of the seasons, the sowing and harvesting of crops, and the daily tasks that ensured survival. Among these tasks, one of the most essential was grinding grains, seeds, and other materials into flour or meal, the foundation of nourishment. Recent archaeological discoveries in regions such as Sumerda and Gosek have revealed something extraordinary. Carefully buried, in deliberate arrangements, were pairs of grinding stones, sometimes matching perfectly in size and shape. These were not ordinary household tools discarded after use. They were valuable, highly crafted objects, treated with respect, and intentionally placed within ritual contexts. The precision with which these grinding stones were paired suggests that they held a symbolic significance beyond mere practicality. Excavators at Sumerda uncovered a set of stones aligned with remarkable care, their surfaces polished from years of use, edges smooth, as though shaped by generations of hands. Nearby at Gosek, similar stones were found within circular enclosures, once likely sites of community gatherings, ceremonies, and sacred rites. Here the arrangement of tools was deliberate, their positions corresponding with patterns of the sun, moon, or perhaps other celestial bodies, hinting at a belief system that intertwined the practical and the spiritual. Grinding stones in these societies were more than instruments for daily survival. They represented sustenance, fertility, and the community's relationship with the land. To bury them carefully, within ritual enclosures, was a gesture of respect for the cycles of life and death, a recognition of the power inherent in objects that transformed nature's bounty into nourishment. Each stone worn smooth from constant use carried the imprint of human touch, the sweat of labor, and the quiet rhythms of life long past. The placement of these tools speaks to a broader understanding of ritual in Neolithic Europe. They were likely used in ceremonies marking significant moments, the changing of seasons, the birth of children, or the passing of elders. Their careful burial may have been intended to honor ancestors, to offer gratitude to the land, or to ensure the community's ongoing prosperity. The repetition of this practice across multiple sites hints at a shared cultural understanding, a belief in the sacred potential of everyday objects. As archaeologists study these sites, they examine not only the stones themselves, but the context in which they were found, soil composition, proximity to water, and the alignment within circular enclosures all suggest careful planning and an awareness of both natural and spiritual forces. These were not haphazard deposits. They were thoughtful, meaningful placements, reflecting the deep reverence Neolithic Europeans had for their tools and the essential work they represented. Imagining these rituals, one can picture the communities gathering at dawn or dusk, the soft light illuminating the polished surfaces of the grinding stones. The air might have carried the scent of grain, herbs, or smoke from ceremonial fires. Elders or spiritual leaders may have guided the rites, invoking protection, fertility, and abundance, while younger members observed or participated, learning the rhythms and stories that define their society. The discovery of these paired grinding stones also offers insight into craftsmanship and material culture. Stones were carefully selected, shaped, and maintained, indicating a level of skill and knowledge passed down through generations. The creation of these tools was not merely functional but an art, reflecting both practicality and aesthetic consideration. The fact that such tools were buried in sacred contexts underscores their value, not just for survival, but as carriers of cultural meaning and spiritual significance. The repetition of these rituals across Europe, from Sommerda to Gosek, suggests that these practices were widespread, forming part of a broader Neolithic worldview. Communities recognized the sacred in the mundane, the extraordinary potential in everyday tools, and the interconnection of labor, life, and spirituality. By studying these sites, modern observers gain insight not only into the practical aspects of Neolithic life, but also into the emotional and symbolic landscapes that shape their experience. As the mind drifts along the soft contours of these stones, it is easy to imagine the hands that held them, the care with which they were buried, and the quiet intentions behind each placement. These objects, simple yet profound, bridge the gap of millennia, allowing a connection with people who lived, worked, and dreamed under the same sun and moon that we see today. The Neolithic grinding stones remind us that even the most ordinary objects can carry extraordinary meaning. They speak to a humanity aware of its dependence on the earth, attentive to its cycles, and capable of imbuing the physical with spiritual resonance. In these silent deposits, there is a whisper of a world long past, offering calm reflection and gentle wonder. Through the discovery of these tools, we glimpse the rhythm of life that sustained Neolithic communities, the reverence for labor, and the care with which humans marked the sacred moments of their existence. They are a testament to the ingenuity, patience, and sensitivity of ancient societies, an enduring reminder that even the smallest objects may carry the weight of history, spirituality, and cultural identity. In the quiet of the excavation site, with soil softly yielding to careful hands, the paired grinding stones emerge not just as tools, but as storytellers. They invite us to slow our thoughts, to consider the delicate balance of practicality and belief, and to imagine the lives of people who lived thousands of years ago. Their legacy is subtle yet profound, a gentle whisper across time that calls for attention, reflection, and a sense of calm, inviting the mind to drift into the stories they carry and to rest in the quiet continuity of human endeavor. Iron Age Iberians impaled severed heads on nails for public display. But why? In the rolling hills and rugged landscapes of Iron Age Iberia, communities thrived in a world shaped by the land, the seasons, and the rhythms of daily life. Villages were small but vibrant, with stone houses, narrow paths, and communal spaces where people gathered, worked, and celebrated. For these communities, survival was inseparable from understanding both nature and the other people around them. Life could be harsh, but it was filled with rituals, stories, and practices that helped define identity, reinforce power, and maintain order. Archaeologists, exploring burial sites and settlement areas across modern Spain and Portugal, have uncovered an unsettling but fascinating practice: the public display of severed human heads, impaled on nails, stakes, or posts. The discovery of these skulls, often placed near entrances, crossroads, or prominent locations, initially evokes shock. Yet when examined through the lens of anthropology and history, a story emerges, one that illuminates the values, fears, and social structures of the Iron Age Iberians. These heads were not discarded carelessly. They were treated with attention and purpose. Many of the skulls show signs of careful cleaning, polishing, and preparation, suggesting that the act of display was deliberate, ceremonial, and highly symbolic. The positioning of the heads facing outward from settlements, or visible from main paths, indicates a message, meant to be seen by both the community and outsiders. Each skull carried weight, literally and metaphorically, as a warning, a marker of authority, or a testament to victory in battle. Understanding the context requires imagining the daily life of these communities. Iron Age Iberians lived closely with the land, and with one another, and social cohesion was vital. Leaders and warriors gained influence, not only through skill and strength, but also through symbolic acts that reinforced their status. Public displays of defeated enemies, while unsettling to us today, would have communicated power, deterred aggression, and established a clear hierarchy within and between communities. Some of the skulls show signs of ritualized treatment. Marks on the bones suggest careful removal from the body, followed by preparation before being affixed to posts. In certain cases, the skulls were painted, adorned, or placed with offerings, blending the realms of the physical and the spiritual. These actions may have been intended to honor the spirits of the dead, harness their power, or protect the living from future harm. Through such practices, life and death were intertwined, creating a symbolic landscape in which the past continually influenced the present. The choice of location for the displays is also telling. Posts near settlements, along paths, or at territorial boundaries acted as a form of communication. They were a visual language, understandable to all members of the community, whether young or old, neighbor or traveler. The heads themselves became objects of memory, warnings that carried both fear and respect, reinforcing cultural norms and social expectations. Scholars have proposed multiple interpretations. Some view the displays primarily as tools of intimidation, designed to prevent conflict or rebellion. Others see a ritual dimension, connecting the act to religious beliefs or ancestral veneration. The dual nature of the practice, practical and symbolic, highlights the sophistication of Iron Age Iberian culture. Even in acts that seem brutal to modern eyes, there was intention, meaning, and a structured worldview. It is also possible that the practice helped communities deal with the trauma of warfare and death. By transforming a violent act into a visible, controlled ritual, Iron Age Iberians could make sense of chaos, assert control over mortality, and reinforce collective identity. The impaled heads were reminders of the stakes of conflict, the fragility of life, and the strength of the living community. Imagining the scene centuries ago, one can picture the quiet mornings and dusky evenings where villagers passed the displayed skulls. Children might have been taught to recognize the signs of power, respect, and danger. Elders might have told stories of bravery, conquest, or warning, ensuring that cultural knowledge passed from one generation to the next. Even the wind, rustling through the posts, and the changing seasons would have contributed to the atmosphere, blending nature with human ritual in a subtle but powerful way. Archaeological studies continue to uncover more details. Soil analysis, post positions, and associated artifacts reveal patterns that speak of careful planning and deliberate choice. The Iron Age Iberians were not acting randomly. They were making statements, crafting symbols, and navigating the social and spiritual dimensions of their world with a remarkable understanding of human psychology and culture. Today, as we examine these skulls in museums or study them in excavation reports, it is easy to feel detached from the human reality behind the objects. Yet, when considered in context, they tell a story of strategy, symbolism, and the interplay between life, death, and social order. These artifacts remind us that ancient societies, though distant in time, were deeply thoughtful, capable of complex rituals, and attuned to the meanings embedded in everyday and extraordinary acts alike. The severed heads of Iron Age Iberia are not merely relics of violence. They are markers of culture, communication, and belief. They reveal a people who used symbolism to navigate a challenging world, a civilization that transformed even the most stark realities into objects of meaning, warning, and reflection. By studying these remains, we gain insight into the human capacity for creativity, ritual, and social cohesion, even in circumstances that seem harsh to us today. The practice of displaying heads, while difficult to witness in imagination, shows an awareness of human psychology and societal needs, a window into a world where every act carried significance, every object had meaning, and even death could speak volumes. In the quiet of modern analysis, amidst the dust and the careful cataloging of artifacts, there remains a whisper of the past. The Iron Age Iberians, their villages, and the solemnly displayed heads invite contemplation. They allow us to reflect on mortality, power, and the intricate ways human societies have understood their place in the world. These artifacts, preserved by time, speak softly but insistently across millennia, urging us to pause, consider, and connect with the rhythm of life, long before our own. And as we leave these discoveries behind, it is worth noting that the story of the Iron Age Iberians is not one of mere brutality, but of sophistication, symbolism, and humanity, a testament to the ways people have long sought to make sense of life, death, and the complex social world around them. Huge collection of 270,000 beads unearthed in Copper Age tomb in Spain. In the sun-washed valleys and rolling hills of Copper Age Spain, human life moved to the rhythm of the seasons, of planting and harvesting, of hunting and gathering. Communities were close-knit, their lives interwoven with the land, the animals, and the subtle patterns of nature. Every object, every tool, and every ornament carried meaning beyond mere utility. Among the discoveries that have survived the passage of time, few are as mesmerizing as the recent excavation of a tomb that contained an extraordinary collection of beads, more than 270,000 individual pieces, carefully preserved and meticulously arranged. These beads, made of shells, stones, bones, and other materials, are silent witnesses to a culture that valued craftsmanship, symbolism, and the spiritual resonance of objects. Archaeologists first noticed the tomb as a low mound, almost hidden in the landscape. The entrance was unassuming, covered in centuries of soil and vegetation, revealing nothing of the treasures within. Yet beneath this simple exterior lay a world of color, pattern, and human intention that would slowly emerge as the excavation progressed. The beads were arranged with care, forming strings, necklaces, bracelets, and intricate geometric patterns. Some were placed directly with the body, draping across shoulders, chest, and hands, as though to accompany the deceased on their journey beyond life. Others were arranged in small piles, carefully separated by type and material, suggesting not randomness but intention, and a deep understanding of aesthetics and symbolism. As each bead was unearthed, it became clear that the people who created and placed them had an extraordinary sense of order and purpose. The sheer number of pieces, hundreds of thousands, hints at the tomb's importance and the significance of the individual interred there. This was not an ordinary burial. It was a statement, a ritual, a careful orchestration of memory, wealth, and spiritual connection. Many of the beads were crafted from materials that traveled vast distances, suggesting trade networks, exchanges, and connections between communities spread across Iberia, and perhaps even beyond. Shells from coastal regions, stones from distant quarries, and bones from animals not native to the immediate area reveal a culture engaged in complex relationships, both social and economic. The colors of the beads, though faded by time, still hint at vibrancy. Reds, whites, blues, and earthy tones speak to a deliberate aesthetic choice. Perhaps certain colors were used for specific symbolic purposes, representing life, death, fertility, or protection. Perhaps they held stories, or invoked the presence of ancestral spirits. Each bead, small and fragile, carried meaning, a tiny piece of a greater narrative that has endured for thousands of years. When the archaeologists carefully catalogued the tomb's contents, they noticed patterns that suggested not only artistic intention, but a cosmological or spiritual one. Beads arranged in spirals, concentric circles, and linear sequences might reflect ideas about the world, the movement of the sun, or cycles of life and death. In this way, the tomb itself becomes a reflection of the community's understanding of the universe, a miniature cosmos carefully crafted by human hands and imagination. It is easy to imagine the scene of the burial long ago. A quiet valley, a small group of people gathered in reverent silence, arranging the beads around their departed companion. Perhaps chants or songs accompanied the ritual, the sound of soft voices echoing against the hills. Perhaps the bead strings were laid out with great care, each one a prayer, a wish, or a blessing. The act of placing each bead would have been meditative, deliberate, and intimate, connecting the living with the memory of the dead and with the spiritual world they revered. The tomb's location, slightly elevated on the landscape, indicates a desire to make the burial visible, to mark it as important. Travelers and neighbors would have passed by, recognizing the significance of the mound. The beads, even in decay, would have shimmered in sunlight, hinting at the care, wealth, and status of the person within. This visibility, both to the living and the spirits, reinforces the idea that these artifacts were not merely decorative but symbolic, carrying messages across generations. Modern analysis of the beads provides further insight. Microscopic wear patterns, traces of pigment, and residues of organic materials suggest they were used during life as well as in burial. Some may have been gifts, personal ornaments, or tokens of social bonds. Others might have held protective properties, believed to guard the wearer against misfortune or harm. In this sense, the tomb encapsulates both the social and spiritual life of Copper Age communities, preserving a narrative of care, intention, and belief that continues to resonate across millennia. The sheer scale of the collection, 270,000 beads, is staggering. It speaks not only to the craftsmanship of a community, but also to their patience, dedication, and understanding of symbolism. Each bead is a fragment of a story, and together, they form a narrative of memory, reverence, and human creativity. The tomb becomes more than a resting place. It is a testament to the enduring power of material culture to convey identity, values, and belief. In the quiet halls of the laboratory, where each bead is studied, photographed, and preserved, there is a sense of awe. Tiny objects, fragile and unassuming, have survived thousands of years to speak to us. They tell of a world where people carefully considered the meaning of each act, where beauty and spirituality intertwined, and where even in death, the living and the dead maintained a profound connection. As we reflect on the discovery, it is important to remember that the beads are not only artifacts, they are voices from the past, reminders of the care, artistry, and humanity of those who came before us. They encourage us to pause, to consider the depth of human experience, and to marvel at the capacity for meaning embedded in even the smallest objects. This Copper Age tomb, with its immense collection of beads, offers a glimpse into a world that is both distant and familiar. A world where humans, like us, sought to understand life, honor the dead, and create beauty. The beads, strung together in patterns of color and form, become a meditation on time, memory, and the delicate threads that connect us to those who lived thousands of years ago. Through these discoveries, the past becomes tangible, whispering softly through the silence of the tomb and the careful work of archaeologists. The beads remind us that even in the vast sweep of history, human intention, creativity, and spirituality leave traces that endure, inviting contemplation, wonder, and a quiet connection to those who shaped the world long before our own time. In this collection of 270,000 beads, we find patience, ritual, art, and devotion. And in that patience and care, we are reminded that human creativity has always been a thread woven into the fabric of our shared history, visible in the smallest, most delicate objects, shining softly across thousands of years, waiting for our eyes and our minds to recognize their story. Explosive legal document exposes corruption and conspiracy in Roman-era Judea. In the sunlit hills and dusty streets of ancient Judea, life unfolded under the watchful eye of Roman authority. Small towns and villages carried on their daily routines, merchants opening their stalls, farmers tending olive groves, families gathering for meals. Yet beneath this calm surface, power, influence, and politics intertwined in complex and often secretive ways. The Roman governors and local leaders exercised authority with a firm hand, while ordinary citizens navigated the delicate balance between obedience, tradition, and survival. It is within this world, more than 2,000 years ago, that a document was created, a legal text, whose words now ripple across centuries, buried, perhaps forgotten, and preserved through chance. This document provides a rare window into the inner workings of Roman-era Judea, a time of intrigue, negotiation, and sometimes outright conspiracy. The text itself, inscribed carefully on papyrus, begins as any legal document might, formal, precise, with exacting attention to titles, dates, and the names of officials. Yet as scholars began to study the fragile scroll, they realized that it was far more than routine paperwork. It detailed disputes over land, allegations of bribery, and manipulations of the law, capturing the tension between Roman administrators, local elites, and ordinary citizens. Each line hints at human ambition and the struggle for justice, revealing motives that remain surprisingly relatable even today. The legal document was discovered in the remains of a Judean village, tucked away in a storage area that may once have housed the archives of a local magistrate. Time had preserved the papyrus just enough to allow modern technology to reveal its contents. As conservators carefully flattened, cleaned, and digitized each fragment, the story began to emerge, a tale of corruption and conspiracy, where wealth and influence could bend justice, and where the ordinary people often suffered quietly in the background. One of the most striking features of the text is the language of accusation. Officials are accused of taking bribes to sway decisions, manipulating property boundaries, and even using intimidation to secure compliance from citizens. Yet the document is not merely a record of wrongdoing, it also reveals the mechanisms of accountability, however imperfect in a society structured by both Roman law and local custom. Complaints were filed, witnesses called, and resolutions sought, even when the system itself was fraught with human failings. The implications of this discovery are profound. Scholars now understand that governance in Roman Judea was not a simple imposition of authority from afar. It was a negotiated, complicated landscape where local leaders and Roman administrators interacted in ways that could foster both justice and corruption. The document paints a vivid picture of a society that, while distant in time, reflects the enduring complexity of human relationships, power, and morality. As one reads through the fragments, one can almost imagine the daily lives that intersected with these legal disputes. Farmers tending to olive trees or vineyards might suddenly find their land claimed by a local official, merchants arguing over the accuracy of tax records, families appealing to authorities to protect their inheritance. Every line of the papyrus reflects real human concern, real stakes, and the intricate web of social and political connections that define the era. Modern analysis has also revealed subtle nuances in the document that speak to the culture of secrecy and discretion. Marginal notes, corrections, and cross-references indicate that the scribe was aware of the sensitivity of the information. Each word was chosen carefully, each phrase weighted with meaning, not only for legal accuracy, but also to protect the individuals involved. This delicate balance between truth, caution, and ambition allows the document to act as a kind of time capsule, preserving not only events but also the mindset of the people who recorded them. Archaeologists and historians have noted that this legal scroll provides insights into the everyday power struggles that shaped Judean life. While monumental events such as wars and revolts dominate historical narratives, documents like this remind us that ordinary governance, the negotiation of rights, and the management of disputes were equally crucial in shaping society. They reveal a world of personal relationships, subtle pressures, and careful maneuvering that made life both challenging and profoundly human. It is easy to picture the scene of the creation of the document: a scribe in a dimly lit room, candlelight flickering across the surface of papyrus, carefully recording complaints, signatures, and decrees. The air is thick with the scent of ink, the quiet murmurs of officials, and the tension of decisions that would affect many lives. Outside, the streets of the village continue with the rhythmic patterns of daily life, unaware of the fragile text that will endure for millennia. In studying the document today, we gain insight not only into the mechanics of governance and law, but also into the human emotions that underpin political life: ambition, fear, loyalty, and resentment. The text bridges the distance between then and now, reminding us that the challenges of authority, fairness, and accountability are timeless. Through the preservation of this legal papyrus, we also witness the care and skill of the scribe, someone who understood the importance of documenting events accurately, knowing that the record could one day outlast their own lifetime. Each letter, each line, carries weight, both in its immediate impact and in its future resonance with scholars and historians seeking to understand a distant world. This discovery, while rooted in a specific time and place, has universal significance. It illuminates how humans have always grappled with the tension between personal gain and communal responsibility, between law and power, between secrecy and transparency. The document allows us to hear the voices of those who lived, negotiated, and struggled under the weight of authority thousands of years ago. As we reflect on this extraordinary find, it is clear that the legal papyrus is more than a simple artifact. It is a story, a record, and a connection, a thread linking modern observers to the intricate social fabric of Roman-era Judea. It encourages us to listen, to consider, and to marvel at the continuity of human experience, even across the vast expanse of time. The scroll's fragile fibers, etched with ink that has survived centuries, are a testament to the endurance of human intention. And in the quiet of the laboratory, where researchers handle each fragment with care, there is a sense of reverence, a recognition that within this single document lies a wealth of insight into the lives, struggles, and triumphs of those who lived long before our own time. In the end, the explosive legal document from Roman-era Judea reminds us that history is never just a series of events. It is a living record of human choices, ethics, and interactions. It is a whisper from the past, inviting reflection, understanding, and appreciation for the delicate interplay of power and humanity that continues to shape the world even today.